Hello, everybody. Welcome to another DMVCBN podcast. I'm your host, Freddie, and I am the DMV comic book nerd coming to you live from Washington, D.C. Today is June 22nd. It's a Saturday, and I can't wait to talk about comic books with you all. Today, I've got a special guest. Travell's back on the show with us. So let's bring him on.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Travell, Big Boy Nerd here. It's really lovely to be back on the podcast. I have my daughter with me for a couple of minutes. My daughter she's a fellow mutant, hopefully a comic book nerd in training. This is
Yeah,
Charlotte. Yeah, this is Charlotte Storm here. But again, Big Boy Nerd's back in the building. It's really lovely to be
yes.
back on the podcast. I love having these conversations. It's always a wonderful time.
Likewise, glad to have you back on the show. Welcome
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Hello, Charlotte. Welcome. Glad to have you for the first time.
Say hi, Bubba. Say hi. Hi.
Hello.
Say hi.
Yes, we
Let's
want
see.
to encourage comic book fans of all ages, and
That's right.
like, and can't wait to see if she grows into loving comics as much as her dad.
I hope so. I mean, that's why I guess her namesake. I gave her the middle name Storm on purpose. I wanted her to like actually, honestly, between you and me, well, between all of us and our listeners, I actually wanted her to actually have a space that she can identify with places that she can feel empowered. And comic books have always been that for me. God bless you, sweetie. Comic books has always been that for me. A place to find, stories of people or people's experiences that are closely aligned to mine, or people that can make me feel empowered. So I literally like dipped right into the comic books and chose a character that kind of embodied that, and from a group of characters that I've always loved that mean a lot to me and my family. Like my older brother got me into comic books through the X-Men, so and rest his soul, and I wanted to kind of honor him, and also honor myself and give her a space to know that she can actually kind of carve her own niche in the same space if she chooses to do that. So,
Yeah,
I just wanted her to have that so that, so hopefully she will be a comic book reader in training. I really do hopeful. I'm hopeful.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we love it. Awesome. All right, so today we are here to talk about a bunch of different comics. I'll show you a little image I put together of some of the books I've been reading this week. Um,
Nice.
and hopefully you've read some of these as well. Um,
Ooh,
so we got
ooh,
some Blood Hunt books. I've been reading Blood Hunt. You can see Black Panther Blood Hunt over there. Number 2 came out this week.
right.
We've got Amazing
You say that, mama?
Spider-Man Gang War. Right, this is a
Right.
pretty cool event that happened mostly last year, but I'm catching up on it. Here
Mhm.
on this podcast, we talk about comic books that are old, comic books that are new, comic books that are
Nice.
from all publishers. We just want to talk about comics we're enjoying. Um,
Right. That.
and
So,
and as you can see right here in the middle, I've got a new title by an independent publisher called Super Dangerous. Can't wait to talk about this. This is pretty cool.
yeah.
Um, by Resolve Comics. So we'll talk about that later. Um, Also, on your recommendation, I finally picked up Wonder Woman. I know you've been a
Nice.
fan of that, so we can talk about some
Yeah.
Wonder Woman today.
Nice.
And I also, got some more World's Finest done because, like, I really do enjoy that book, but like,
I
I
really like
keep
it.
go, I keep going in starts and stops. So like, I'm not
Me
fully caught
too.
up, but I did catch up on the Elementary arc, and that was pretty good. So we'll talk about that as well.
Ooh, ooh,
And if you
ooh.
have any other
Okay.
books that you want to talk about, actually, let's take turns. Like, if we can
Yeah.
have a back and forth going, that would be pretty
You
cool.
dancing, mama? Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, like I said, I am reading a few things right now. I'm reading Green Lantern War Journal. That's been really dope. I'm reading Ultimate Spider-Man, obviously, who isn't reading
Yes,
Ultimate
I read
Spider-Man right
that
now.
too as well. Yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man.
Whew, man, that's it always like it always moves. Ultimate Spider-Man, yes, baby. Yes, yes. You're so sweet. Ultimate Spider-Man always moves in a way that it's like it feels like it's breakneck. It kind of works like an anime episode. I don't know if any of our listeners watches anime like that, but it works like an anime episode. It's like a bite-sized piece of a story that would like that's really substantial, but will keep you going and keep you wanting more. And that's kind of how those books, each one of those issues, I'm like, it stops like right in the middle of something that's like just about to happen for the next, the next part of like an action sequence. Like it'll just stop right there, and you're like, wait, are you really stopping the book here? Like everything is getting so good. It's like Ultimate Spider-Man does that a lot. I notice, and I really love it. And I'm reading. Oh gosh, I'm gonna see what else I'm reading. I gotta think about it. Like I'm gonna look in my stuff and take a look
Well,
and see what
while
I'm
you're
reading.
looking, let's talk about Ultimate Spider-Man because like we
I'm with
both
that.
read that.
Yeah,
I'll pull up a picture of the cover here. Um, let's see what we got.
oof,
Okay, so
so good.
Ultimate Spider-Man 6. This came out this week. And by Jonathan Hickman and Marco Cicchetto. Um, this book is huge, very popular. Got 12,000 pulls on League of Comic Geeks.
Whoa,
It's pretty big. Um,
really? Wow.
hmm So there's that. I mean, Jonathan Hickman books are always pretty popular.
Yeah,
um,
he's one of the best writers out right now. He's like one of the best writers. I don't think he can be denied.
yeah, he's pretty great. I mean,
Hmm.
I do have my criticisms. Like I will say that um, it's been pretty dialogue heavy these first six
Mm,
issues,
mm,
which some people prefer that,
mm.
and that's fine. But for me, I mean, it's not that it's not enough action. It's just that for me, it's just not enough fun. Like
I
honestly,
see.
this week you might have seen me on Threads. I was going back and watching old Spider-Man cartoons from the '60s, and those are so
Yeah,
goofy and silly, and
yeah,
like
yeah.
and they
They
have this
are
fun element. Like, but it's just a totally different vibe. Like this one feels very grown up, and even though it does have a few jokes, a
right,
little bit of humor, it doesn't quite capture some of the fun and silliness of some other Spider-Man comic books for me at this
right.
point. But that's not a huge
Mm.
complaint. I'm still enjoying it. The art is amazing. Um, what are your thoughts?
To tell you the truth, I think that the point that you make about that is actually really, really valid. That it's actually not as like action heavy. However, I actually kind of like that in a weird way. I actually think
Mm-hmm.
that, but I think that that speaks to more so of my experience, and I think that there is a I do say so because I am queer. I identify as queer. I think that there is something that has to be said about how there's like heteronormativity that has to be spoken. It has to kind of be established in a new way when it comes to Peter and his relationship with Mary Jane. And I think that that in itself kind of creates like more of a dialogue heavy sort of experience because he's establishing a new world, but also establishing these new relationships with these characters. So there's going to be a lot of dialogue, so I actually like that because I'm actually really curious to see what this family looks like at this age. Because Ultimate Spider-Man at this point in time, he's my age. He's like 36, 37. He's like trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure out what it like, and and he's at this space that he has kids now, but he's had kids for years. He has, he's married with in a functional relationship. There's a lot of stuff that I really like about the storytelling between him and Mary Jane. That like Mary Jane and him have like a functional, healthy, relationship that actually is full of questions, full of like dialogue, full of like a safe psychological space for the two of them. Because so many times in comic book history, especially Spider-Man, they always make it like he has women trouble, like relationship problems, all that other crap. Instead of doing that, like it's the same sort of thing that they did with J.J. Jonah Jameson. It's like, let's invert that relationship. Let's like see what that looks like if they actually had a good relationship, if it actually did work out. And I think that all of those changes require a lot of dialogue to kind of establish the world building. So I can understand, but also it does kind of slow down other set pieces. So I see it's a give and take. I don't think it's hard to like create that balance of both. There's not many books that have done. I'm trying to think of a book that actually is really good at that. You know, a good book that was really good at that, the balance in the dialogue and the action was Batman Hush. Batman Hush was like
Mm.
very, very good at that. The balance of both. It was like, you're in Batman's mind trying to figure out what he thinks about stuff, but then you're also trying to solve a mystery. So the mystery itself kind of it kind of evolves into like a lot of action because like all these other characters show up and so like, I think that that's really hard to do when you're establishing a new whole new ultimate line because like Spider-Man, X-Men, there's a couple of like Ultimate lines that are getting reestablished right now. So they got to kind of build it up. So that's kind of why I think that it has that kind of look.
Yeah, yeah, it's been a long time since I've read Batman Hush, but yeah, I do think that that's a
Mm,
great story that people should check out. For Ultimate Spider-Man, I do think that the relationship between Peter and Mary Jane is a big, huge draw for a lot of fans. Like a lot of fans have been like begging for them to
right,
get back together, stay together. Like it's ever since One More
right,
Day. Like I was one of those fans because I think we all pretty much enjoy them as a couple. Marvel loves to like push them apart just for drama and for um, I guess you know, in their words, they want to make this keep the stories interesting, having Peter
right,
be a bachelor. Um, and it's back and forth, but yeah, when this book came out of the gate saying, yeah, it's an adult Peter Parker, it's an adult
right.
Peter Parker, and he's back with Mary Jane. They have a family now. They have kids. Like that was a huge draw for people who were reading the Amazing 616 title and were like, they're broken
Right,
up again. So,
right,
um,
right. I always say that when it comes to Spider-Man, that his sweet spot is right when he's 16, like 17. It's a coming of age story. That's his sweet spot. Is like a coming of age story. It's like when he's at a space and time in his life in which like he's like starting to like just accept that he's like turning. It's like a story about puberty. It's like, all right, well, I'm starting to change into this new, adult. What does that look like on my body? What does that look like in the space that I take up? What does that look like? And I think that's the sweet spot for Spider-Man. I think that's still the sweet spot for Spider-Man. However, I think that Hickman is actually taking on the undertaking. He's like actually trying to establish a new sweet spot for Spider-Man. It's been done at times. Like Dan Slott tried to do it with making him with Parker Industries and making him like a Steve Jobs esque kind of character. That's been done at one time. We can go all the way back to like the early '90s with like him being with Mary Jane and the black suit and all other stuff, and that and being done in different ways. So there's always like, let's try to make him older. Let's try to do this. Let's try to do that. But I actually think that his sweet spot is when he's like 16, 17, not even like 14 to 16 in that range. When he's in a space in which he's like growing into adulthood. I think those are the strongest stories you'll get from Spider-Man. But I think that Ultimate Spider-Man is kind of trying to give that kind of arc for Spider-Man and run for its money. But we'll see. I think that we'll only know when it's totally done. We'll only know
hmm.
like what Hickman was trying to do when it was like it's like done.
Well, it's interesting
But
you
I have
say
faith
that
though.
because it kind of brings me back to the original Ultimate Spider-Man series by Brian Michael
Mm-hmm.
Bendis and Mark Bagley.
Uh-huh.
Like Spider-Man was a teenager in that book, and I was a teenager when I was reading it, or even a preteen
There
at
you
that
go.
time, and it was huge. Like it was one of the most popular comic books I think at that
Right.
time, and I was locked in. I was getting all the issues like month to month, and you know um that series ultimately became a cartoon show with a few adaptations.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and then the movies kind of also borrowed that with like Tom Holland. They intentionally tried to cast a younger Peter Parker at that time, and
Mm-hmm.
um, but to be fair, like the comic books, he was only in high school for a few issues, and then he went to college. I think within the
Mm-hmm.
first, I can't remember exactly the issue was within the first 50 issues. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Um, and
Mm-hmm.
then ever since then, he's pretty much been adult Peter in the
Yeah.
616.
Adult Peter.
But
Right.
I think there's room for both stories. I think and especially now that we have Miles Morales, he can kind of take more of the high school storylines, and Peter Parker can give us more of the adult storylines.
Right.
But
Right.
I do want to share this one spoiler image from this new issue. So if you don't want to see any spoilers, uh, pause or fast forward or whatever. But this one panel here, or this one page actually, when I saw it, I was like, wow, this is what we came here for.
Exactly.
you know, like
There is so much about this that I loved. I agree. I'm so glad you shared this panel.
hmm you got Mary Jane actually giving him the name Spider-Man in this universe, which is very meaningful because like his daughter helped him come up with the design for it, and he just revealed this to the rest of his family, to Mary Jane and to his son, and so this was kind of like a nice moment. I mean, it's kind of silly because like, how do you not come up with the name Spider-Man? Like, it's very like she even says it's obvious, isn't it?
Yeah. I
But
mean, I actually thought that was funny too, but I think it makes sense because like she's a PR exec in this
mhm,
storytelling. She's like a PR genius. So it makes
mhm.
sense that, she would be able to, oh, well, this is how the best way to market you. And I think it was like, even though it was like kind of on the nose, I still think that it actually served the story really well, if I can say so.
That's fair. I mean, I do feel that one of my complaints is just that we do have a Peter Parker who really doesn't know what he's doing, and
Mhm.
that's because he's been deprived of this part of his life because of the Maker and his interference and everything. So, um, Peter Parker is just now discovering, or just now taking this opportunity to put on a costume, be a superhero, and learn about the ups and downs of that. And I mean, it's interesting. I've heard some other podcasters point out how like this version of Peter, like in a way, he's arguably less heroic than like the Harry Osborn of the
Interesting.
story because Harry
Huh.
Osborn had to like work to
I
like get
like
his
that.
powers, and he like
Wow.
he didn't have it handed to him, so he knows that like uh
Yeah.
whereas Peter, he kind of had it handed to him, and so like he still has to learn the great power, great responsibility thing. Um, I don't
That's
know. I think
fascinating. That's fascinating. Wow.
yeah, I'm not sure if that's exactly what Hickman intended, but we'll see if it goes further along down that line. Because like the issue before this was a lot of Harry's backstory, and it was like,
Right.
um, and you can
Wow.
kind of see how he's had a little bit more struggle in his life because his father is so it's Norman Osborn, so
Right.
um,
Right.
that can't be easy. And then I don't know, but then again, Harry also did get stuff handed to him as well because he inherited all of his father's
All
wealth
of
and
this. Yeah.
everything. So
And I think that that's an interesting point you bring up. I don't think I've ever like, the thing is, like, I'm reading it from my perspective of being a dad and that range of responsibilities and being a husband too, not even just a dad, but a husband. And I don't know what
mhm.
ways that in itself kind of presents and creates like the thing is, it's like the whole notion that you just said about him not learning power and great responsibility yet, I would argue that he has learned it. I think he's
Mhm.
experiencing it right now as a dad and as a
Mhm.
husband. That is the great power and responsibility. Therefore, it's harder for him to make decisions that could endanger him and himself and his family. Because if he's endangered, that means he can't be there for his family. If his family's endangered, then what is he? How well is he being a hero? So there's like
No,
all
I
of
do
these like
agree. I
questions
agree
that
with that entirely. Yeah, like
Mhm.
honestly, I feel like that is a central conflict of Spider-Man where we see it over and over where you know, he always talks about great power and great responsibility in terms of being a superhero, but then we often see him failing his responsibilities to his family, to Aunt May, or to like to his friends, and now he actually has a wife and kids. So it's like, and even in this issue, he comes home beat up, and everybody's like, "What happened to
Like
you?"
what the heck happened? Right. And he
Are
couldn't
you?
lie to them, which I
He
thought was
couldn't lie
big.
to
I
them.
thought that was big. Right. That he
Yeah,
told them. I think that was big.
it was big that he told them the
Yeah.
truth and that he apologized for not telling them
Apologized. Right.
already.
And not telling
Like
them. Right.
that
That's what I
that
mean
was
about how different. Yeah.
mhm.
That's incredible. Because that's how I mean about how different it was for like this sort of Peter Parker is that first and foremost, he doesn't have the same sort of emotional hangups and a lot of the same sort of emotional dysfunctionalities. Like he's not dysfunctional as he was when he was a teenager that experienced a series of mass traumas and then decided to self-abandon to become Spider-Man, right? So you take Peter Parker from 616, if we were to compare the two between like Peter Parker from 616 and Ultimate Peter Parker of what was going on now. 616 has experienced multiple tragedies. Both of his parents are dead. He got adopted. So that in itself is its own trauma response that he has to make sense of. And that in itself kind of makes him put him in a position in which he has to kind of self-abandon in a lot of ways. He doesn't have a sense of self the same way. And then on top of that, then his uncle, who was his father figure, ends up dying. murdered, like really, really horribly. So then from there, then he gets this newfound power. So all of these different things that happen to him all at the same time kind of puts him in a position to really think that he should just like straight up self-abandon and be a superhero. Only like, and that's a form of self-abandoning. It's not taking care of yourself first, taking care of others first, and just like leaving that be. Now, ultimate Peter Parker, who's in his 30s, has a totally different outlook. First and foremost, his uncle's still alive. So that in itself is going to make him think about the world a little bit differently. And then secondly, he's married with kids. It's like the way he sees the world is going to be totally different around like what he thinks is, the concepts of like what he thinks is worthwhile, what he thinks is worth his time, and how and what ways he would actually execute on those things. Now, I think it's big that he told his family what was going on, because that is a huge delineation from 616 Spider-Man. Because 616 Spider-Man is so broken up about not having his family and not having any of the tools to actually build community, build family, because of like what happened with him in his lifetime, that he just keeps lying to the people around him. Either he lies or he takes the macho route and he's like, I can't get anybody involved because I'm a hero and they will get hurt and all this other stuff, even though them being with him automatically makes him involved. So he doesn't take the same sort of responsibility the same way. And I think that now in 616, no, sorry, in Ultimate, he actually has to think about that in a larger breadth. So sorry to cut you off. I think that's important to mention the parallels around the
No,
two
that's good stuff.
characterizations of Parker.
Yeah, like I do want to mention that in this version, he does still have Uncle Ben, but he did lose Aunt May in the same event that where Norman Osborn was killed, and this all is because of the Maker and his false flag
Right,
terrorist attack, um
right.
and yeah, it's interesting. Like I'm curious to see where this goes. I feel like it's leading to something. I just don't know what it is. Like now we have all these separate Ultimate titles, and I feel like it's probably got to come together for some big event. But we haven't heard any solicitations about that yet. So who knows? Maybe they're just trying to launch a new line of comics. I just don't know. Um, there have been rumors that the Marvel 616 is going to reboot in September because after Blood Hunt,
Really?
a lot of books like Doctor Strange and Blade and I think maybe even Avengers. I'm not sure, but like a lot of these books are. I think She-Hulk is getting canceled. Like a lot of these books are not
Wow.
continuing as far as we know. So they might have a shakeup or something. But I mean,
Wow.
we do know that the X-Men line is relaunching already as of this month,
Yeah.
I think, or next month.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm still upset about that. Still.
yeah, I mean, I'm coping.
Yeah, I don't know
um,
how you do. I mean, more power to you because I'm still upset about it.
well, have you finished reading the Krakoa stuff yet?
No, I haven't finished it yet. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to finish it all when it comes into like a graphic novel form and just bang it all out at the same time. Because I was like, I'm
Gotcha.
behind in like at least 10 issues. I'm behind in like at least 10 issues and I'm reading other things. So I'm like, I'm just going
Yeah,
to wait till it's like all in one comprehensive volume and just run through it all. And then
yeah,
because like I said, I'm again, I'm already just really turned off from the idea
yeah.
of
Mm,
them ending the story. I mean, like I read on I think it might have been Twitter or Threads. It might have been Twitter, but someone said something that was so succinctly said that the X-Men are profitable when they're being punished, and then when
yeah,
they're
and
put through the
persecuted,
ringer,
oppressed. Yes.
persecuted, oppressed. That's when they're profitable, and
hmm
that says a lot about America. That says a lot about how it treats its people of color, its minorities. It says a lot about it. It's all connected to capitalism. It's all connected to like the plunder of a people is
Mm,
connected to profit, and
yeah.
that's it's kind of and that's sort of the story of America when it comes to Black people. It's a story of
hmm
America. It is a story of the subjugated in America. It's like you make money off of torturing them, and that's what
Yes.
we're doing with the X-Men. Again, we gave them some respite, gave them some time to like be, love themselves a little bit, and then we just strip it all away because that's what we do in America. So that's why I think that symbolically it hurts me a lot to see that because I just hate that that's the situation.
Listen, like, yes, let's speak on it because, like, I have definitely kind of felt along similar lines. I will say that for me, like, I'm pretty much current with the book, so like, I will say that if you make it to the end of the Krakoan era, there are a few, olive branches, or what would you say, like a few. It's just like a few storytelling choices that do give you some kind of closure or sense of like for me, it ended relatively well. Like I was not disappointed. I was more
Hmm,
happy with the ending than disappointed.
really?
I'm still
Wow.
disappointed, but like it's just like
Right.
but I do feel like all the people who worked on it put their best into it, and I think um, I'm. It's part of being a comic book reader, a long term comic book reader, to experience these cycles of change. So
Hmm.
a
Right.
big changeover, it has to happen sooner or later. So I get it. Um,
Yeah.
I'll try to be open minded about the new stuff, but it is hard, but at least it helps when there's a lot of when the books have decided to kind of not fully let go of it. Like I not hopefully this isn't a big spoiler, but I will say that you know they haven't erased Krakoa. It happened, okay? So that's a big
Oh, okay.
thing that people were concerned about. Are they going to pretend none of this happened? No, it
Yeah,
happened.
I was concerned about that
So,
too. Wow. Okay, that
hmm
makes sense. That makes me feel a little bit better, a little
hmm
bit, but because like maybe they might be able to explore that a little bit more. But I
hmm
still think that it happened really prematurely. I think there was a little bit more. There was so much more space to tell a story
yeah, it
there.
had a lot of potential
Um,
that is kind of left on the table, um, but right now, we last week we talked about the current X book. It's X-Men: Era of Apocalypse, and this book
hmm,
is basically just it's going to be bi-weekly, and it's only 4 issues, and it's kind of bridging the gap between the end of
really?
Krakoa and the new era, the Fall from the Ashes era. So
Wow.
you get to see a lot of the main characters who were heavy hitters in the Krakoan era. So,
Hmm,
or even some of the lesser
wow.
promoted characters too. So you're always glad to see that. Um, but let's talk about some other books in our list. Do you want to pick one to talk about next?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd like to talk about actually Twilight, Avengers Twilight. I just finished it. I know I'm a little bit late. I know it's weeks late, but I just finished it, and I actually thought that it was a good story. I think that Chip Zdarsky is actually one of the best writers in the business right now. I think he's really talented writer. I think he's told a lot of really good stories that um, I don't think really get as much penetration in the Marvel populace, the Marvel comic book reader populace, as much as it should. I think about a story like Life Story, Spider-Man Life Story he wrote a couple of years ago. That was one of the
Yeah,
best Spider-Man books I've ever read, man. That was one of the best, and that takes you through his whole life
yeah.
cycle, like from when he gets bitten to when he becomes like, you know, so when he eventually like stops being Spider-Man and passes away. And it was like really,
hmm
really well done. And I think Zarsky is like one of those writers that is really has a really good grasp of each one of the characters. And I think that he really displayed that in Avengers Twilight. I think that Avengers Twilight, to be able to age these characters up, tell a story about what they would look like in the future, in a future, says a lot about how much he understands the characters and how much in what ways he could actually play with the information that he has and the understanding of these characters.
Mm.
And I think also too, like for him to know which characters would be important to tell a story around, as opposed
hmm
to being like, oh, you know, there's so many Avengers. We've had so many different Avengers throughout time, so many different characters that were Avengers. So which characters do you choose to tell a story and tell this type of story with? And I actually I thought it was like smart. I thought it was like really well done. So I actually
Yeah,
like
I
it. I actually
agree.
thought it was good.
Yeah, like I love this book from jump, like from the first issue.
Yeah,
Um, it's really a tight 6 issue,
right.
just mini series, and like I said, it kind of goes back to life story in the sense that we're kind of uh, you know, well, I don't know, it's a little different from life story because life story was about contextualizing Spider-Man in real world time, like from the '60s up to the present. And then this one is more about like it's in the future. Like it's kind of like in the past they used to do all these the end books. I don't know if you remember that. Like like
yeah. I do
Avengers
remember
the
that.
End or Fantastic Four the End, X-Men the End.
Hmm.
Like, and so that was a whole fashion thing where they were like, oh, these are the stories from the future about the last story that they'll ever have or something like that. And
Right. That was like Old Man Logan was in that trajectory. There was a couple of books that they were doing in the early,
hmm
like the 2010s of sorts, the 2010s
hmm
that they were like, no, earlier than that. Because like Old Man Logan is like,
Old
what
Man
is that?
Logan was
That's
kind
like
of, it started its own kind
2002.
of thing, but yeah, it was Old Man
Mm,
Logan also is in the same vein of like you got the
yeah,
old man version of our heroes, and here we have Old Man Cap, and but
right.
also it reminds me of Earth X. That was one that I really liked, where you get to
Yes,
see
Earth
a
X.
future
Wow.
version of, yeah, man, that story, which was a trilogy: Earth X, Paradise X, and Earth X.
Damn.
What was it? Paradise X.
I think
Universe X was in the middle. I think it was
Universe
Universe
X.
X.
Yeah, it's been a while since I
And
even
so,
touched those. Jesus
oh my
Christ.
God, man, that story is wild because it was just such a deep dive into Marvel history, and but it also was like doing something new at the time. And then when I look back on it, a lot of things that have happened since then seem to come out of Earth X. Like, just for example, like a female Thor. Like, I mean, I know
Right.
we got Jane Foster, and it kind of has roots going back to older comics, but like in general, just a lot of different things came out of that. Um, but we're not here to talk about Earth X right now. I want to get back to
I'm talking
Avengers
about
Twilight and just
Twilight
kind of
because
say,
we can go because but that's the nature of comics because comics kind of take you all over the place.
yeah,
So
like there's
I
so many comics, and they all
yeah,
kind of homage each other. Like people have
right.
said this resembles Kingdom Come, Dark Knight's Returns, like
Yeah, it
all
does.
these stories. So,
It does.
I
It
mean, we
does.
even got Alex Ross on covers, so like that's a
Yeah.
huge
Yeah, like that's Kingdom
reminder.
Come. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like Kingdom Come at its finest. And that's like one of the
hmm
best like future elsewhere stories ever told. And he actually did the
hmm
like didn't for Kingdom Come, he did the art for all of it. I'm pretty
He
sure. And
did
that's
the
a
art
rare
for
thing.
all of Kingdom Come and the
All of it.
interiors. He did the
And the
covers for
interiors.
Earth X
Right,
in that trilogy. So like
right, right.
he's been a long comics book
Hmm.
legend as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned. But
And he doesn't do that
also,
anymore. He doesn't do interiors anymore, I don't think.
well,
I
not
haven't
as often.
seen
I think the
yeah.
most recent time I saw him do interiors, I have a hardcover of Fantastic Four.
Oh
What
yeah,
was it
he
called?
did. Yes. I know you're talking about. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like the continuation of the coming of Galactus story. I think it's the. I know
Yeah, it was
exactly
like
what you're talking about.
it was like a special edition hardcover. It was pretty
I
cool.
have it
It's
too. I have it
oversized.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it too. Actually, it's like full circle, or I forget exactly what it was
Yeah.
called, but it was a
Yeah. Fantastic Four
yeah
full circle. That's
full
it.
circle. Yeah, something like yeah. It was yeah. I didn't even read it yet, but I heard that it's incredible. I
Yeah.
heard that, but I heard it's even better if you actually read the story that precedes it. It's a story from the 1960s. The
hmm
Jack Kirby. It's like a Kirby story actually from the 60s. If you read that and then read the new one, it completely syncs up. So I was like,
Yeah.
I gotta read both.
Yeah. So Alex Ross is amazing. I also want to shout out Daniel Acuna. Like Daniel Acuna is one of my
Yeah,
favorite artists too, and like his artwork is
he
just it has
killed
its
this.
own unique quality.
Yeah, it
Like
does.
it's a little bit painterly, but it's also a little bit inky. Like I don't know how to describe it.
Right,
Like he doesn't use a
right,
lot of outlines. He uses color and light in a way that
right.
not a lot of other artists are doing. So props
Hmm,
to him. Like
that's a
he
good
has this
point.
great
Yeah.
variant cover for the last issue. I want to point out if I can bring it up here. Like look at this one because you got the whole
Oh, that's
team finally
gorgeous.
assembled. Yeah, and it's got
Wow.
this beautiful like sunset quality. Like we're talking about the
Yeah.
Avengers at the end of
Wow.
their well not the end of
The
their run,
tenure.
but yeah, but they're kind of later on in life, and so their sunset year, so to speak. So
Right, right.
um, it just looks really cool.
Wow.
I love it. You kind of got
Wow.
Ms. Marvel in the place of Giant Man now, which makes sense. You know,
Yeah.
she's like a
Yeah.
legacy hero.
Right.
Um, you got a brand new
It's really
Hawkeye, which
smart.
I won't spoil for
Mhm.
anyone who hasn't read it yet.
Yeah. I like the
Um,
I actually like that Hawkeye. Can't even front. I actually liked it.
yeah, it was
I
interesting.
did.
Like
Yeah.
lots of great stuff happening in this series.
Hmm,
So
hmm.
highly recommend it. Um, any other thoughts about it before we? talk about something else.
Well, I think that there's there's elements of it that I thought were sort of kind of like I don't know. I think that I wish that I could have saw more of it. I mean, I think that there's enough story to kind of tell more of a an in between time. I mean, like there's elements of stuff that happens. You find out that like I won't. Hopefully, I'm not spoiling too much, but you find out that Tony Stark has a son. Tony Stark and Janet Van Dyne have a
Mm-hmm.
son. And that in itself is really fertile territory. I mean, like I'm curious to see how did that even happen? Like where how did they even decide to become an item? Like to me, that's really fascinating. Where how did they decide to become an item? Why did they decide to like make things work? It's just like there's a lot of different things I want to know that this story kind of leaves space for around like world building because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of things that happen. We're kind of at the apex when we get to the story in just the first issue alone. We're already kind of going up towards an apex. It wasn't just like usually a lot of stories start at a level space and then go up. In this case, the story was already going up. By the time you open the first page, it's already like going up. It's already a lot of stuff happening. Stuff has happened. They're dealing with things like for instance, like they're already living in like a fascist totalitarian society, and like
Yeah.
there's a lot that they have to make sense of with that. And there's been a whole big exodus of heroes. A lot of heroes died. There's like a lot of so shit has
You got
happened. So
you
that's
got
what
my
I
man
mean about like
Luke
yeah,
Cage leading the underground group of defenders. Like
he
you
might be
got
my favorite characterization. Actually, he might be my favorite characterization in this whole story was Luke Cage.
yeah, like that was pretty
Yeah.
cool. Like I, like you said, I think there's a lot of groundwork that was laid, and
Hmm.
I can guarantee someone's going to revisit it somewhere down the line, whether it's Chip
I think
Zdarsky
so.
or whether it's another team. I think
Hmm.
someone's going to want to come back to this world and just kind of add to it
Right.
because so much was done in these 6 issues to kind of establish what this world is and how it's different.
Right.
So yeah, and that's the best thing you can do with a miniseries to make people want to come back for more.
That's a good point, actually. I don't think I've ever thought about that when it comes to a miniseries about how important that is around like trying to grab a reader enough to like. Because I wonder if a miniseries kind of works like a miniseries for a television show or a first season of a show. See if you can hook enough viewers, hook enough readers to expand on it. Because it
Hmm.
might be the case. Like it might be very very similar in that regard. That like you kind of just got to see if people will be interested enough to keep it going, and then you tell a larger story around it, and it gets us on. I mean, that's kind of it's happened a lot in comics. I think that point you make is a really really strong one because it happens a lot in comics. Like the miniseries become like its own story. This happened with Spider Gwen. Spider Gwen has taken on her own now. Sorry, Ghost Spider, because at
Hmm.
first it was just Spider Gwen,
Yep.
and it was like an Elseworld story. It was like like I think it might have been a subset of a story that was told when I don't know if it was original sin or if it was or was it the original was it
I
the
think it was
Secret
Spider Verse.
Wars.
She first popped it up in
Spider
Spider
Verse,
Verse,
okay, Spider Verse, right, she's
the one
popped
in
up
the
in Spider
comics.
Verse, right,
This
right,
is
right, 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 right,
before the movies even.
before the movie,
Um,
yeah, way before the
mhm.
movie, right, and that's why I remember like her showing up because I actually have her first issue. I have the first run of Spider Gwen before she even becomes Ghost Spider because like that's a new thing that it is just added. But that's a good example. It was like that was a mini series, but it kicked ass, and like everyone loved it, and it turned into its own thing. It
Mhm.
was so good. It was just so good, and I think that hopefully Twilight will have the same appeal because it's just such a rich like space to be in. I mean, like I'd like to know, like I want to see how yeah, there we go. Gwen Stacy Spider Verse. Yeah, because she's Spider Woman.
Yeah, at that point
Oh,
she was Spider Woman, and she was in
right,
her own universe all by herself.
right. Our own universe. Right, right, right. And I really love this story. I love that we were talking about art and the color choices. This in itself was like really magnificent.
Oh
Just the color
yeah,
choices and the palette, the bright pastels that they decided to go with the majority of the story. The neon, it was like a lot of like neons and pastel colors in this story, and it really
yeah,
worked. It still stayed really dark somehow. I don't know how they
yeah.
kept the story so dark, but and it look, but it was just really well done. But
You could say the same for Avengers Twilight. They both had kind of
indeed,
like a bit of neon to represent like
right,
the future, whereas it still had a darkness and a grittiness to it. Like they're both like outstanding when it comes to color. I think both of these series. Um, but
Mhm.
yeah, one more thing I'll say about Avengers Twilight is I think that I've heard that this story by Chip Zdarsky, it took him a long time for it to get the green light. I don't know why.
Really? I didn't
I
know
don't
that. Wow.
know. Yeah, I mean, I'll have to look into that more. But from what I've heard, like, I think he's pretty much finished this story a long time ago, and then he kind of had to kind of get it approved because now he's been working at DC, right? He's been doing Batman.
Yeah,
So
I've
like,
been doing Batman.
I don't even know if he's at Marvel right now, honestly, um, except for this book. So maybe they
Hmm,
finally
hmm.
decided to, let it see the light of day, or maybe they thought the time was right. I don't know, but that'd be an interesting thing to read about more or hear more about how this book came to be because I'm glad it finally was released because can you imagine if they just
Right.
passed on it?
Yeah, man. It was just like as I said, it was such a really, really good story. And I think that there was a lot of potential there. And I think Chip did what he could with what he got, like, and I think that it really worked out. I think that, I just think it was really, really fun and it was sort of sad at parts, but I think that, we're at a point now that, at least I'm at a point now that I don't really get as sad about those post-apocalyptic stories because there's so many of them. There's so many stories that are
Yeah,
being told right now that kind of from that angle is like, all right, well, and I don't know how much that is kind of dulling the effectiveness and the usefulness of those types of stories because those stories are supposed to be like cautionary tales, especially in this case. Like if you think about like the Red Skull and how he plays a role in the story in some way and all the different
yeah,
elements of the story. I think that like that kind of shows that we're at a like that character is more relevant than he like has ever been in the last couple of years. That character is very, very
yeah,
relevant. And especially the state of America and like how politics are going right now. I think that story was
mm-hmm,
very poignant, but I think that that's like also in a litany of other stories that have kind of told us these cautionary tales about how to think about our leaders, how to think about our places in American society. And I think this is one of those stories that kind of does that again. And I think like for instance, there's a lot that happens in a story that kind of treats Steve as like, and I saw Steve Rogers as like as just straight up symbolism for what America's soul. Like there's parts of the story like it's like the qualities and ethical values of Steve Rogers are very old in a lot of cases. So Steve Rogers is old in the story. He's old. His heart is like not the way it once was. His physique
mm-hmm.
isn't the same way it once was. He has to like get a re-injection of super soldier serum. He has to like there's all these to me there's symbolism around how like we have to introduce these like older ideas of American society, re-examine them, see the ways in which they've been an issue, and try to do some work around like trying to reintroduce them to a new generation, to a new audience, and also beyond that, really really drive home why it's important. And I think that his character really kind of drives that home. Like all right, yeah, he's on his way out. He might be dying. He might be old. All this other shit. But this is why he's still doing it. This is why it's a purpose around it. And I think that that's kind of the whole point of Twilight, of like to kind of show like, yeah, these things are all these qualities of American society, maybe very old, maybe outdated, and in many cases may have been just not inclusive originally. And I think that like this story kind of tackles all of that, but in a really symbolic and artistic way. I'm like really proud of it. I think it was smart.
Agreed.
Mhm.
All right. Well, let's move on and talk a little bit about Blood Hunt because,
Yeah,
man, if you're not reading Blood Hunt yet, you gotta put it on your list
I
to read
got to.
sooner or later because
Wow.
it's
Okay.
really great. Um, Here, let me try to share an image of what's going on right now. Like this week, they released Black Panther Blood Hunt #2. And that's just one of several Blood Hunt books that came out this week. But that was the big one that I was just loving this week. So let me see. Why isn't
Thank
this
you.
popping up? Let's see. Share. Okay. So have you read any of the recent Black Panther books?
I have been reading Ultimate Black Panther. I've been reading
Yeah,
that.
right.
Yeah, I've been reading that, but I haven't read the stuff that's been going on with him in 616.
All right. So I will try to say this in the most spoiler-free way I can. Uh so Black Panther is heavily involved in what's going on in Bloodhounds.
Mm,
Um, and this series by Cheryl Lynn Eaton, a black woman
huh,
writer, like she's doing a great job. A lot of us
really?
want her to get um, the ongoing coming out of this because this issue was so amazing. And then
Wow.
also you've got Fareed Karami on art doing a great job. Um,
I
yeah,
gotta
like
read this, man. Damn, I didn't know
this
it was a
is
black woman writer that's writing this right
yeah.
now.
I'll go down
Wow.
to her picture down here.
Yes, please.
Yes, Cheryl Lynn Eaton. She's
Wow.
on Twitter and she
I've
often
seen
has
her.
some
Yeah.
insightful things to say. Um, got a
Yeah, she's
black
brilliant.
colorist, Andrew Dollhouse.
Let's
Like
go.
uh like this series is doing some great stuff. It's referencing the Ta-Nehisi Coates era, and the
Woo,
work he did with the gods and the Orisha and everything.
woo.
Um, yes, like specifically the intergalactic
Mm,
Empire of Wakanda, that run, because that run was dope. Like people have their misgivings about the first run he did, but he was still learning the ropes of writing comics.
right.
But by the time he got
Wow.
to Intergalactic Empire of Wakanda, that shit was lit. Like I'm so sorry, like that's one
Damn,
of
I
my
know it's
favorite
dope.
comics.
No, I gotta
Yes,
read it because I know it's dope, and that's gonna go right. It's gonna be right into Afrofuturism for me, and I need to
and
read
guess
that.
what?
That's on the list.
Daniel Acuna was the artist on that run as well. So like it was
Really?
dope. Yes,
Uh,
so like I can't recommend that one enough. But like this one kind of builds off of what happened in those stories and it actually does introduce a retcon to the Wakandan history that for me was very impactful. Like this was
wow,
released
really?
on this was released on Juneteenth and on June 19th,
Whoa.
okay? And this had a storyline that said way back, it's like spoiler alert, but way back in the past,
Hmm.
um Bast freed the Wakandans from slavery from demons. And that is why they worship Bast in the first place. And T'Challa is descended from that line of the first Wakandan people. So like
Wow.
this is you know, for me, like that was very meaningful. I mean, I know that
Wow.
there's a whole history of Wakanda's never being a conquered people or an enslaved people, and and that can still kind of hold up in the sense like once Bass freed them, they were never enslaved again. You know, you can still kind of say it goes with it, um, but I know I will say someone did try to argue with me on Twitter about this. I was not really in the mood to have a debate, so I mean, people are free to have other opinions, but for me, like it was just so well written and so like
Wow.
meaningful. I think that you know, if you have misgivings about the retcon, I mean, just take it for what it's worth. Like it's just a story. It may or may not be followed up on, but the point is that like if you don't like it, you can skip it. If you do like it, you know, it's
I
it's going to
just think
be great.
that's difficult. That's disappointing to hear because I think that a lot of those stories are just taken from actual history. I mean, there is history of slavery that did happen in Africa. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Enslaved people did live in Africa as well. I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
that, but the way in which the caste system worked, and the way in which it worked was totally different. It wasn't, again, it was like a totally different sort of system of like living there around like how people actually were inducted into a caste system, inducted into slavery. Totally different. So it's like people are, I think, are kind of reference point is American slavery, which is
Mm-hmm.
like just like a human rights atrocity. That's something different. It's a little bit different. Not to say like slavery in any case is like okay, but I'm saying that like there's a different sort of nuance around how we should talk about it and view it within like a historical lens. And I think that like going like based on what you're telling me, it seems like whoever like the people that made the final decisions around that to be like, yo, we're going to tell this story about how like this, the Wakandans were originally enslaved and they got free and all that. I think that there's a lot to be said about that. I think that's smart. I think it's like a good
Yeah,
idea because there's not many other Black characters that you could explore that kind of history with that same
Mm-hmm.
way, especially like T'Challa. T'Challa is from literally from the African diaspora. He's from the motherlands. So there's one of the few
Exactly.
characters that you could tell that history with.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
like this, that's why it was so meaningful for me because it's like, um, usually, people like to point to the Wakandans as an example of Black excellence, and that's all well
Precisely.
and good. But like,
Hmm.
but in my experience as a Black American descended from slaves, that sometimes people within the Black diaspora look down on us because they like people tend to have some kind of sense of superiority in the fact to say that they were never slaves. I'm like, well, it's not like we chose to be slaves. Slavery was not a choice, despite what Kanye or whoever might say. It
Exactly.
was forced upon us. It was a genocide on our people, really. And we're through our resilience and strength is why we're still here today. So it's like, so I think the whole point is just to say that slavery, wherever it happens, is never acceptable. Like that's why stories about freeing slaves or enslaved people are so powerful because somebody
Hmm.
needs to stand up and do it and say like this is not right. uh and then and just to in a way I find the Wakandans more relatable now because I feel like
Yeah, definitely.
they have this
Right.
in their past and
Right.
they've moved on from it to become the great people that they are today, and it doesn't diminish them at all. It just adds to their strength of character. So it's like I want people to stop saying that having a history of enslavement or in bondage is some mark of shame. And no, it's not, because
No,
it's
it's
like
not.
it wasn't
Thank
our
you.
choice. And
Thank you.
I think people need to respect that, I think. So
Right.
hopefully.
I agree with you. And that's why I love your shirt. And that's why I bang with who's on your shirt more than Black
Yeah,
Panther in
Luke
a lot of
Cage.
cases.
Luke
That's
Cage,
right.
man.
That's why he's one of my all-time favorites, because that character crystallizes all of everything you just said. And I think, and I really, really appreciate you saying everything you said. Like, Luke Cage is actually a part of a carcinal system of, like, of enslaved people. He is a Black person that lives in America that descends from slaves and is caught up in the same sort of racist systematic system that is America, that puts him into like new slavery, new Jim Crow, if you want to say that. He's like literally back into the jail system, the jail circuit, jail system, and is experimented on as slaves were, as Black people in those situations were. He represents and crystallizes all of those things. And then on top of that, he's usually looked at with disdain. People are like, oh, well, his stories are not well written, or he's a Black caricature, or this exploitation time, and all this other stuff about his character. And I think that in itself is a form of anti-Blackness. To say that, oh yeah, like I like T'Challa better because T'Challa represents this regal Blackness, and it's like he represents a fantasy around like how and what ways Black people want to see themselves, and I think that's very
Mm-hmm.
important. However, I think that there's a lot of strength actually being able to keep in mind, keep hold of our history and how ugly it was, and still find a way to actually refashion that into something that we could be proud of. And that's why, like, I think that Luke Cage absolutely crystallizes that. And I'm glad you brought up the next book. Yeah, because I think that kind of represents like, this book in itself is really kind of shows that in the same way. It's like he knows that the system isn't for him, right? Because Luke Cage in general, Heroes for Hire is as an attempt for that. It's an attempt to buck him back at the system and trying to find a way to master capitalism for his own gain. Heroes for Hire is that. Heroes for Hire is like, yo, pay me what you owe me for me to
Mm-hmm.
put my black body on the line. That's what that is. And he's like going
Yes.
against the system. He's trying to use the
Listen.
system for
Oof.
he's going
Yes.
against it.
Speak on
And
it,
then I
man.
think
Because
that you dig. I think the same thing is
yes.
happening in gang war. I think the same thing's happening.
Right. Man, I agree with so much of what you're saying because like I don't even know where to begin because like this is like I'll just say, I've been reading Gang War. I've been reading Luke Cage is one of the tie-in books. But it's kind of Spider-Man focused, but you also got a lot of the street level heroes involved. I rock with my boy Luke Cage. I think that, like you're saying, there are a lot of reasons people might try to tear him down. I think that I think that there are two aspects to the history of him because, like, he was not, created by black people, but he did kind of he has been reclaimed by black people,
That's right.
over the years.
Right.
And
That's right.
and I think their intentions in making him were pretty good. Like, he was the first Black American Marvel superhero, I
That's right.
think,
That
or at least the first
might be
Black
Sam
American
Wilson
to have his own
on his own book.
title.
Yeah, his own
Yeah, his
book
own
is
book.
like it might be Luke Cage, but I think it might be Sam Wilson might be
Sam.
the
Yeah, I think.
actual first.
Well,
Yeah,
I
I think
mean,
he might
or
be the
Storm,
first.
even if you think about it, because Storm, she's both Kenyan and American, so she's
Yeah,
got that
I
both parts
think
of her
I
history.
still I still think Sam has it because Sam was featured in a lot of Cap books first,
True,
so I
true.
think
It might
Sam
be
still
Sam,
may have it. Yeah, I think it is Sam,
but
and then I think it's Sam between Sam and Luke. I think that are the first Black American. I think.
yeah, but Luke had his first solo book out. I'm pretty sure that's the
Mm.
record of his you know history, and I think that's meaningful. Like, and then ultimately he did come to share it with Iron Fist, like they're longtime
Hmm.
buddies. I guess you could say they're the ebony and ivory of comics or whatever. Like they
I mean, I think that tells a lot. I mean, also, I think that kind of ties into what I was saying about like the system being white and him being
mm,
just like indoctrinated into this system of white writers. It's kind of like you
mm,
deal with that. It's the same sort of thing when I think about Heroes for Hire, him having a white counterpart, the same way I think about black couples on television, right? You can't ever have, like, usually in most primetime network television shows, they don't put two black lead couples on a television show, right?
mm.
Two black leads. You can't have that because for some reason it's a black show. It becomes a black show when you have two leads. Why couldn't Luke Cage have his partner be Misty Knight, which ends up happening in an original, like in the Netflix series. It's like Misty Knight becomes his partner, and it becomes a black show. It was just super
Mm.
black, and it's like there's first and foremost, there's nothing wrong with that. But my point is that that usually happens with like protagonists is that they have to be they have to be either it be Luke Cage and Danny Rand or it be Virgil Hawkins and his homeboy that's white. Whatever the case may be, you always have to like put like these black characters in the if you put them in the main role, they have to have a white counterpart to make white readers feel more comfortable about the whole experience of like watching a black character lead. And I
Listen,
think that
yes, like,
Luke Cage is that.
ooh,
He goes through
we
that.
could talk about that all day because I agree.
Yeah.
I've spoken on this podcast before about it. Like, I
Mhm.
have nothing wrong with uh,
Mhm.
interracial relationships or white
Yeah, nothing wrong
allies
with
or
that.
anything. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just
Right.
saying that. But when you look at media, today's media through black eyes, it's very
Right.
apparent that you do
Right.
not see a lot of like black,
Right.
monoracial couples
Right.
or friendship on
Couples
TV
or
or movies.
friendships. Yeah. Right.
It's like
Friendships. Yeah. None of
and
that.
then when you do, it becomes a black show, like you say, like a quote
Yep.
unquote black thing, and
Hmm.
like and like it's just so weird. Like it I could name a million shows, but I'm not going to right now, just because I don't want to get on my soapbox, but I just want to say, like, Luke Cage though, um, I'm excited for him to have gotten this newer miniseries. I'm still disappointed that his miniseries during Devil's Reign was canceled and never saw the light of day. Like, that was during like
Whoa.
his 50th anniversary. I don't know what happened there. Uh,
Whoa. I didn't even
I'm
know
very
that.
very disappointed about that. I won't let it go. But
Damn.
any but yeah, it's tough when you're a black character because there's so much pressure to perform. Like, if your book doesn't sell well, they'll say, oh, because and they literally say this. Like, Tom Brevoort, the editor of so many comics, has said, well, there are no leading black males in X-Men comics. Like, are you kidding me, sir? You're just not
Yeah.
looking. You just
Kidding
don't want to
me?
use
Yeah.
them.
Are you kidding me? And it's
Like
racist for you to even consider that these characters aren't already coded black. Are you kidding me? Like, that's
right,
crazy.
that hurt me so much because I'm like, y'all just gave Sync this huge push and everybody loved it,
Right.
and then now he's nowhere to be found in the new X-Men comic books, and then, like, and Bishop, he keeps getting written out of the
Right.
comic books, and
Right.
like these characters are there, y'all just don't want to use them, and
Uh, that's
y'all don't
you're
have faith
absolutely
in
right
them.
about that. You're absolutely right about that. I mean, I think, but that's why when you have a black like not to parallel and flip too much, but I think about like another comic book character that I love, but is in opposition to all the heroes is Amanda Waller. Like Amanda Waller doesn't
Mm,
have that problem because Amanda Waller, first and foremost, is a woman. So, but that's why Amanda Waller is important because she's not sexualized usually. That's why she's important. But on top of that, she's a woman and she's an antagonist to a lot of all these white heroes. So she's just getting all these white heroes' ass. So you can actually just feature her being a solo character, doing whatever she's doing, or being the main bad. You can feature her as because that fills enough expectations around what we think black women are like, and we as readers we can actually perceive a black woman being a villain that way. But when it comes to black heroes, it's really hard for us to like perceive black heroes as like actual heroes and doing the right thing and just like having it's like all this confirmation bias, all these different things that you have to like kind of work through and in order to like you have to establish all of that, reestablish what that looks like, and then tell a story. So you got to do work twice as hard with these black characters. So a lot of
yeah,
times when you have white editors like Tom Brevoort, he's only at the first level around it, and I think I would argue the first level around you know confirmation, but all these biases and all this like unconscious biases that he may have. His first level being like we can't. There are no black readers that or black characters that are bankable or profitable or whatever the case may be. I think he's at that level. While if you want to really do that work, you can actually reestablish the character, work through all of those different things, all those different biases that the character faces, and then tell a really important story or have it all be integrated into the story. You can do all of that and still be a really rich story. I guarantee you could do that. There's a lot of characters in which that's done for. I mean, I take someone like if we want to talk about Heroes for Hire again, David F. Walker and Sanford Green's Heroes for Hire a couple of years ago
yeah,
they did magnificent, and that's
excellent.
what that was. That's exactly
Hmm.
what that was. They took all those elements and told a concise story with all those things that I just mentioned, and
Hmm.
that's through two creative black artists. That's the two. David
Hmm.
Walker's black, and you have Sanford McGree that's black. So the both of them go like that. Like let's tell this story and have all of these things matter. Like and all these things like stay together. Like Black Mariah shows up and she's a caricature of sorts, but and still they really write her really well like because they just treat those things like they're important things, important aspects of the story. And I think that when you're a white writer and you don't know how to write in that regard and like write with respect to the black experience in that way, you have a hard time with it. I think, for instance, but I think there are some writers that do it. I mean, I always reference Kelly Sue DeConnick. I know I'm kind of on a tirade right now because I'm so upset about this, but Kelly Sue DeConnick wrote a book a couple of years ago called Bitch Planet. One of my favorite books, as a
Hmm.
matter of fact. And she's a white writer, but she's told the story with these predominantly black women in the story. You understand? There we go. Power Man and Iron Fist. There's the truth. That's what I was talking about. That's David F. Walker. It's almost 10 years ago. Jesus. Yeah, that's David F. Walker and Sanford Green. Sanford Green is one of the premier artists right now in all comic books.
Yeah,
He's
man,
great. Yeah.
so good.
But
Like,
yeah.
but like you're saying, man, like, yeah, like it matters when we have black writers and black artists, putting
Right.
their shine on these characters, putting their take on these characters,
Right.
because that helps us push past the stereotypical nature of some of them. Like some of them might be like stereotypes exist for a reason because like sometimes there is some truth to a stereotype and not it shouldn't you shouldn't use stereotypes to like judge people, but they usually come out of some kind of caricature of a person, and
Right.
when there's more than one black or diverse person, then it becomes less of a stereotype because you're showing more diversity, you're showing more than one type of person. So
Through
like I
characters
think
you build context. Through characters you're able to build context for what these stereotypes are about. Through characters you build the
exactly,
context, and it's not it doesn't have to be offensive anymore.
yeah, like Black Mariah is a perfect example because she shows up in the original comics as such a like kind of a harmful stereotype of like like a big black ignorant
Mm-hmm.
criminal woman, like
Loud
I don't know,
criminal
like
woman,
like
welfare
but
queen type of bullshit. Yeah.
mhm. but then they kind of like, especially in the Luke Cage show, they gave her way more
Yeah.
depth and way more
Oh God,
realism.
he's so
And
good in
like,
that.
oh my God,
Man, I
like
love
Alfred
Alfred Woodard.
Woodard
I
brought so
love
much
Alfred
to the
Woodard.
part.
Oh man, love her.
Like just totally reinvigorated the character. And then even in the comic books, like we've just given her a fresh take. So
Yeah.
I think that's important to kind of reclaim these characters, give
Hmm.
them more depth. Even with Luke Cage himself, like I'm glad you mentioned earlier how like yeah, at in the beginning he was about his money, and like and that's fair. Like a lot of us need to be about that because Black people are underpaid and overworked. Still, like it's like
And if we'd have paralleled the point we made about enslavement, reparations, dog,
reparations,
reparations. We
man.
deserve reparations. So why can't this black
Absolutely.
man put on? Why can't he put on and save these white people in a neighborhood that don't pay him? Like what you
And the,
talking? Like y'all gonna come down to Harlem asking for his help, and y'all
so
not
I
gonna pay him?
so I think the reason is like a lot of these comic books come from a tradition of the white lens where it's like we do this out of altruism, like we're heroes
That's right.
altruistically, and we don't accept money, we don't we don't do this as a job, blah 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 blah, blah. But like
That's a facade, dog.
but I think,
Always
and
been.
especially when Iron Man and Batman are rich as hell, like
Thank you. Thank you. It's right there. It's right in our faces, but we choose not to see it because of the way the narrative we build the narrative around this. You're absolutely right. It's right there. It's like, bro, like what? Like Batman and Iron Man are billionaires. They like don't even need to worry about money, so they have time on their hands to play around and be heroes. That's why
mm-hmm,
like someone like Peter Parker is so appealing because like Peter Parker like was like that's true that's true altruism. But I
yeah,
would argue hear me. I would argue his true altruism comes from his religion, his faith, from him being Jewish. Him
mm,
being Jewish, it puts him in a position to be like, this is the right thing to do with my power. Not necessarily because I'm white and the altruistic thing and the good thing would be to use my power to help people. No, I think it's based on his Jewish faith. I think it's based on like his family having a really strong foundation in his family, people that cared about him and fused a lot of different elements around his Jewish faith into his way he thought about the world. I think that's what makes Spider-Man important. Spider-Man don't have shit. Spider-Man don't have money. He didn't have anything. He didn't have none of that, but he still decided to do what he did. And I think that's why he's so important to a lot of folks. And I don't think people
that
can articulate it that way because nobody thinks about Jewish people in comic books the same way these days, unfortunately. But I do think that that's a huge component of Spider-Man's story.
so that's interesting. Like I kind of wish they would lean more into that because I think like obviously Spider-Man was created by two Jewish men who
Right.
were connected to him in the material. Um, was Stan was Steve Ditko Jewish? I'm not sure, but the
I want
point
to say he was. I'm pretty sure he was actually.
okay, but the point
Mm-hmm.
remains like my point is that I don't know if Spider-Man is often depicted as Jewish. Like I feel like a lot of times he's
No,
kind of vaguely
he's not.
Christian or like
Yeah.
um
Yep. He's not. He's not
they
depicted as
kind of
Jewish, which is
avoid
crazy.
religion. Hmm.
Right, is they avoid it, and that says a lot. That's crazy that they do that because he's like, I think he's strongly, firmly rooted in Jewish faith. I think it's like it's clear. He's like, my boy grew up in Forest Hills. Like I live in Forest Hills now. I know
Okay.
that it's extremely Jewish. It's extremely Jewish. I know cause I literally live where Spider-Man, like I don't know where his exact apartment is, but he's near me. Like his apartment
Hmm.
where he started in the comics is literally exists and it is in Forest Hills, Queens. And I'm literally in Forest Hills, Queens. And I can tell you from experience now, even in the 21st century, that there are still a lot of Jewish people here in the whole entire neighborhood is very Jewish based. There's things that close on the Sabbath. There's things that happen. Like it's the whole culture around us is Jewish. So for them to like not to like kind of leave out Peter Parker's Jewish heritage for so long, I think is anti-Semitic. Honestly, it kind of reads right into the point we were making about Black heroes. It's about profit. It's about making white Anglo-Saxon like this wasp feel comfortable in reading the comic. More like white traditional people feeling comfortable reading the comic instead of it just being like this is the roots of the character. And this is where he shines, and this is why he's important. We don't do that. Sorry, I know
Well,
we're kind of
no, you're good,
going
man.
off on a
I do
tangent.
want to just add to what you just said. I think that from my perspective, I think ideas about representation in media have changed over the years since comic books
Yeah.
started. Like I think when they first created all these characters, everyone from Spider-Man to Superman. Like I think they were actively trying to downplay their
Yep.
Jewishness so it could break out into the mainstream and be popular. And you can't really fault them for that because this was like hot off of the World War II. Like and just like everything like civil rights area. So it's like it was a wholly different. It's a whole different time with different attitudes about it, and media was different. Like media was
Yeah,
like
definitely. Definitely.
white owned. So
Yeah,
but
no
so
question.
now decades later, we're able to kind of say, we need these stories to more accurately reflect the times and the people in the world. Like, we need diversity. We need like there's still a lot of pushback against it, but but in real life, all different kinds of people exist. Why can't they exist in the
Exist,
comic
yeah.
books? Why can't they be leaders? Why can't they be heroes? Like
Precisely.
it's like
Right.
it's just that simple. And
It's so real. I mean, I think about like how there's a lot of pushback. Well, I was angry about a character like how Moon Knight was classified, how he was characterized in this Disney show. It's like they kind of lightly brushed on him being Jewish. They had a scene with Oscar Isaacs wearing a yarmulke in one scene. That was it. It was like he was in his face for a second, then they
yeah,
moved
and
on from
like
the series, and I
and
hated that.
I think a lot of people did. Like I've heard some Jewish people comment that was their least favorite thing about the
Mhm.
series. I mean, um, Oscar Isaac is a great actor, but he often does play ethnically ambiguous. Like he will
He
take different
does.
roles. He played
He
Egyptian in
does.
X-Men, playing Apocalypse. He played like
Yeah.
Irish in another movie. Like he'll do anything. And I think he's
That's fine. That's because Hollywood just
it is what it
Hollywood's like
is.
sure, yeah.
I think he's
Mm.
actually Guatemalan, and I think to Marvel's
Uh,
credit, I think they tried to like say he's both Jewish and like Latino. I think like his
mm,
mother was Latino, his
mm.
father was Jewish, which is kind of confusing because usually
Oh,
Jewishness is passed on through the mother. I
through
think.
the mother, yeah. I
I mean,
I
don't
don't
even get
know
me to
actually.
start.
I'm not
I don't.
sure.
All
Yeah.
I'm saying is
Mhm.
that like it's a religion as much as it is ethnicity.
Oh,
I don't want to. I'm not
right.
the best person to speak on it, but like the point is it was a lot going on in the Moon and
Yeah.
I think
I mean, I think
uh,
you're right.
and
Yeah.
on the topic of representation, I think this is a great segue to the next comic. I want to talk today about a book called Super Dangerous. Okay, so
Sweet.
this is a new indie book by Resolve Comics. Maybe I can try to pull up a picture. Um, But yeah, this book, it stars a black hero. He's basically in the
Ooh.
mold of Superman, but he's 19 years old. He's black. He's American. Um, yeah, like
Wow.
I didn't.
Okay.
It's pretty interesting from that lens because they come out of the gate really strong. So I want to recommend if anyone is interested to check out Resolve Comics. They're also known as Breakthrough Comic Books on various social media
All
because
right. I'm gonna look them
um
up now.
yeah, like they're based in Baltimore, which is not far from the DMV. So very
Whoa.
cool. Let me where are these pictures I had? I had a whole bunch of them and now they're okay. Here we go. So super dangerous. Even the title is black and I love it. It's
Yeah, for real, for real, for real.
like
Word.
and and it's I think this is a black owned company in comic. Like it's by Adam Downing and Lord Kotodwe, and like
Mm,
Josh Sanders is the name of the hero.
sweet.
He is he's got this cool sword. What can I say about this without spoiling it? I'll just say like the artwork is cool. Like it's kind of anime inspired or manga inspired. Like it's very expressive. You can kind of see here.
Wow.
Um,
I
like
like it.
the writing is instantly more authentically black than anything I've read in like a DC or Marvel comic book.
Wow.
Like Marvel and DC, they do have some black writers and they do try to bring some authenticity into it from time to time. But like with
Hmm.
this one, like look, he's like, "Hey, bro," like
Word.
like he's just
Word.
saying like the words he's
Word.
saying. are just more like
Excellent.
authentic. And like, look at this cover. It's like
Right.
a variant cover
Oh,
that's
that's
like
sweet.
specifically, I think that's Superman #1, like that's homaging there.
Yeah, that's
Um,
beautiful.
hmm
Absolutely beautiful.
and
Wow.
he's got the hoodie, like so many of these in the Nikes, like so many of these things,
Right.
like it's empowering to see superheroes wearing these things when in real life, it's like we know we're often judged or
Yep.
harmed for these things. Like I
Right.
can't not mention Trayvon Martin and his hoodie. Like we all remember that in the way that this child was murdered for like appearing threatening.
Yes, appearing threatening. Right.
And so this kid is super dangerous. Like he comes out the gate
Tight.
like knowing his power, and like within the first few pages he's like, well, how did Spider-Man get back in here? My bad. But basically
All good.
he gets struck by lightning, and that's how he gets his powers.
Whoa. Cool.
And um
Huh.
then what
Huh.
happens? But this,
I like
like in
that.
the first few pages, he uses his powers for good, like all around the world. Like he can fly, he can do all this stuff. So I thought I had another page here. But basically, I have to call this out because it's super important. He said that, oh my gosh, it's not here when I need it, but okay, here we go. He even managed to get all the world's governments to agree to a global ceasefire on all conflicts. And he's like, that's right, I did
Whoa.
a world peace. Unfortunately, strong arming the world superpowers into enacting your will tends to make humanity nervous. So here's where the whole plot gets going,
Mm.
because then the US government kidnaps his family, and he's like, I gotta save my family. And then he encounters like something supernatural. I'm not gonna spoil it, but like
See, I
um
need to mess with this. All right. All right. Yep.
yeah, like it gets into the action right away. And I think that's just such a urgent message in this world. Like we're literally watching the news every day. People are like, we're all like not. I think a lot of us are trying to like demand a ceasefire in Gaza, um, Israel, like just ceasefire over there. Um, I mean, we've got issues globally.
Right.
We've got famine in the Congo. We've got all these things that we want to deal with. I think to see Black heroes addressing these things in conflicts is powerful, and I love to see it. Um,
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that generally is the case. Like when we think about most activism in a lot of parts of history is usually done by people of color, Black people. I mean, like there's, or if it's not done by people of color, like the activism or the treatment towards people of color or the minority, it usually kind of informs the way that we think about the world. Think about how we can change the world, how we can think about the world in a new way, and refashion the world. I think about how there's a lot of like you just brought up the war in Gaza right now. I think that if like we were to study like the way in which like civil rights movement like was enacting sort of like changes to like kind of protest certain things, or even like the protests in Vietnam, like if we use those tactics, which we are using those tactics to inform the way we think about the world now. We learn from the people of color, the Black people, the subjugated people. Like we learn from them. It puts us in a position to really understand how to like better engage how things are changing in the world. I think that time actually kind of time and not talking about certain things really aid those that subjugate us really, really well.
mm,
It actually really helps them along. I think about like, for instance, like right now, like a lot of kids, we were talking about the war in Gaza. There's a lot of kids that are protesting a lot of these companies that are investing in war bonds or investing in money that actually is gone, that goes to Israel to actually continue this war. So like a place like Starbucks has actually been getting hit over the head with a lot of stuff right now because a lot of the generation under us, Generation Z, is it Generation Z? Yeah, Generation Z is actually
yeah, Gen Z.
is they're Gen Z. Yeah, they're actually hit to protesting and actually boycotting a lot of these brands. So one of the brands is Starbucks, and Starbucks is like right now. I was just literally listening to the Wall Street Journal podcast, learning about how like Starbucks themselves they are actually hurting. They are actually doing all of these promos right now for buy one get one free for all their stuff because there's a whole generation of people that are just not engaging with them because of their connection to the war in Gaza, and that in itself kind of goes to my point around how if you go back in time and look at how people of color were doing this during the civil rights movement, boycotting, not doing certain things, it was hurting businesses. That is lessons from the 60s. That's lessons from the past that are being enacted into the future. If we were to actually just think about that more, I think that that kind of informs it. I think that this book kind of is doing the same thing based on what you're telling me. It's like, yo, you're looking at like how to think about American fascism in a different way towards the black body. And I think that this book, based on what you're telling me, it sounds like this book is going to kind of move in that same direction, kind of tell those stories and trying to re-engage the readers in that way. And I think that's important. So I appreciate you mentioning and recommending it. So I'm going to definitely read it.
Yeah, like it's really interesting. There's only one issue out so far, but like I'm excited to see if they're able to like continue the storyline and just keep bringing us more books. I think that Resolve Comics and Breakthrough Comics, they have a couple more books out right now, so you can check that out on their website. But
Right.
I did find the page here. This is the one where like you can see him saving people from a bus. He wants to
Right.
restore hope to them. He went in front of the whole UN and was like, y'all need to have a global ceasefire because I said so.
Wow.
Like don't
I
we all
said
wish
so,
we had
right.
this power? Like I think that
Damn.
like it's a tricky line because with comic books, um, we can fantasize about changing the world, but particularly with big two comic books, they can't really change it but so much. Like, because they always got to
But
come
so
back to the
much.
status quo. So that's why it's a little more. You have a little bit more freedom in an indie book to kind of do what you want, I think. And then also, um, you know, like I think there is value in just imagining change. Like we got to imagine it before we can
Right.
enact it. So, um,
No, it's true.
yeah,
That's
like
that's really what Afrofuturism is. That's really what Afrofuturism is about. It's like it's
absolutely.
engaging in that practice. It's like engage. That's what speculative fiction is about. That's what it is. It's like how do we re-envision what the world is based on what we know now? How do we think about that? That's what Afrofuturism really is in its core. And to know that this book is starting to mess with that and do that, that's ill. I mean, to tie back into like Luke Cage. Luke Cage is a form of Luke Cage. I mean, we always think about Black Panther being Afrofuturism, which it is. But I think that the same thing could be applied to Luke Cage when it comes to just, like the use of sci-fi, when it comes to the use of like his body being altered and
Oh my
changed, the
God.
superhero powers, all of that.
I can we talk for a second? I wasn't planning to talk about this today, but I have to bring
So,
this up now that you mentioned it. Luke Cage and Afrofuturism. Let's talk about Timeless. Did you read that?
mm, you
That came
mean that
out
book by? It's like, isn't that? I forget who wrote. Was that Wade? I really hope that wasn't Mark Wade. I don't think Mark Wade would write some
No,
dumb shit like that. That
it
was.
wasn't Mark
I know you're
Wade.
talking about. You mean like the slave that ends up coming back? It has superpowers. Like when he like somehow there's like a slave in the South that ends up getting superpowers like Superman. Is that the book you're talking about? Because there was a book that I was reading that had that. That was the aim. That was like I forget exactly who wrote that, but that was like 10 years ago. That
Mm,
book came out, and I remember
no,
the white
that's
writer
not
that
what I'm
decided to
talking
do
about.
that. Okay, sorry.
But let me see. Let me try to pull up what I am talking about so we can figure this out because this came out I think either beginning of this year or last year.
Okay.
Um, it was. Let me see. Um, okay, let's see if this pops up. Timeless. It came out December 27th of last year.
Oh
It's got.
snap! No, I did not see this.
It was by Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly. They wrote it. They are white, but you got Juan Cabal, Edgar Delgado on art and colors. But
Hmm.
basically, this story was set in the future, and Luke Cage was legitimately Power Man. Like he had everybody's powers. He had Sentry's powers. He had Hulk's powers. He had
Wow.
his own powers. Like he was
Whoa.
basically the last man standing. He was the one punch man. Like he had everything. Like
That sounds sweet. I did
it
not
was
hear about
really.
this.
He
Wow.
also had the Iron Fist. Like that's why his fist is glowing.
Right.
So like
This
this
looks
is
dope.
it was pretty dope. Like I don't know where they're going with this. Like there was a timeless issue before this starring Kang, and it ended up playing out in the Avengers book. So I think they might follow up on the storyline somewhere down the line. I don't know, but um, it really intrigued me when I read it, and
Mm.
it was yeah, it was doing some
Like I said,
interesting
it can
stuff.
be done. You
Yeah,
can't be an Afrofuturist and be black and be white. It can be done.
yeah,
It can be done.
like
It's about applying a certain worldview. It's about
like
that.
we
Yeah, sorry.
yes we need allies in our efforts to change the world. Like I think
Mhm.
I like Al Ewing's writings for this purpose. Like Al
Me
Ewing is
too.
white
I
and
agree.
British, but
Yep.
he's the one who put Luke Cage and on the Mighty Avengers and made him the central hero, and had primarily black and female driven team. Like he had White Tiger, he had Photon, he had Blue Marvel, like he had Blade. Like it was
I'm not surprised. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Tell me, Alan Ewing is that dude, man. He's one of the best. He's one of my favorite, personally, one of my favorite writers out right now, and I'm not
yeah,
surprised by that at all. I
likewise.
mean,
Agreed.
The Brits usually because of I think the Brits usually from their vantage point always has been a little bit more respectful and softer on the experience around black people. I mean, if you think about even just Mick Jagger being like in love with James Brown and Jackie Wilson and all this other stuff. Like Mick Jagger, the original Brit, he like loved like a lot of those Brits like in 1950s and 60s like love black music, love like blackness from across the pond. And even though like a lot of our work here was not even being seen by most of America, the Brits over there were like really respecting the experience and really respecting what was going on. And I think the same thing is just happening in comic books with Al Ewing. It's like he has enough of a vantage point as a Brit to be like, oh, I can criticize America in this way and like speaking it in like a really, really respectful manner. And I think he's just doing that. I think I caught that a whiff of that from him in his Immortal Hulk series. He had a
Like
black woman character
I think
that he
part
did
of
the
it
same
is
kind of
that
work with.
like Al Ewing, I think he's spoken openly in interviews about how in later on in life he's embraced his queerness. And I think that
Uh,
helped him open his mind to the struggle of the minority. Like I think um I
that's it.
I hope
Right.
hopefully that's something that, most queer people can open their eyes to. I mean, we do know that sometimes even in queer spaces, there is still racism, there's still sexism, there's still issues. But I think that I think generally, we all experience some type of oppression. I mean, most of us are on some type of level, So hopefully we can use that to relate
Yeah.
to others.
I think that's a great
Um,
point. I appreciate you bringing up Al Ewing's queerness. I didn't even know that he actually, disclosed that to the
Listen,
public.
he
I
was a
didn't know that.
mysterious figure for a long time. I mean, I thought he was probably
Yeah,
black when I first heard him. I was like, who is Al
I thought
Ewing?
so too.
And
Right.
then
I was
turns
like, who
out
is
like
this
he's
cat? I thought the same.
but he's starting to be more public now. You see more of his pictures. You see more of his. I there was a great interview on a podcast recently. What was it called? I would plug it right now if I could remember it, but just look up his podcast interviews. And I'm sure you'll find it because I think he's got a new one coming out with Homo Superior. They're doing a creator crush on him coming up soon, so go check that out.
Mm,
Um,
right.
I mean, yeah, always, always, always. It's great to learn more about the writers and the creators behind these books. All right, so I think we got to talk about at least one or two more things before we hop off here because
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
beginning we
yeah.
said we're going to talk about some DC comics, some Wonder Woman, some
Let's do that.
World's
I'm
Finest.
with
Let's
it.
get into it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I'm
I
with
will
it,
let
man.
you
Sorry,
start
I know we
because
can go on tangents. Sorry about that.
it's all good. Um, I want to let you start because you read more of Wonder Woman than me. Like I only read the first issue.
Mm.
So tell us how far you're at and what are your thoughts so far.
I am. I'm only one issue behind. I actually read this one that just came out like last week, but the one before that, I was just talking to my wife about it. I like love deep. I have a deep love for Wonder Woman to begin with, but my wife really really loved Wonder Woman, and it was like kind of one of the cross sections of when we first started dating. I actually got her this really cool Alex Ross piece. No, not Alex
Yeah.
Ross. Alex Hughes. My bad. Alex
Okay.
Hughes piece. Adam Hughes. I'm sorry. I'm a little tired, but Adam
That's
Hughes
all right.
piece, and which it's like all of the Wonder. It's like all of these different like women of DC. So it's like Wonder Woman's in the middle. There's like next to her is like Power Girl, and then next to her on the other side is Supergirl, and Catwoman's on it. There's like this really. I'll I'll see if I think the piece is called "The Ladies of DC" by Adam Hughes. If you want to see if you could find that sometime, but it's one of those pieces that actually really means a lot to me, and it kind of made me kind of fall deeper in love with Wonder Woman. And I've been kind of consistently reading her books for the last 15 years because of it. Whenever there's a new book out, I'm like, oh, let me check it out. But this book, however, is really magnificent. It, you know, I have been sort of on the fence about just male writers taking on Wonder Woman. There has been like really great writers in time, like that's taken on Wonder Woman. Like Greg Rucka is like really a fantastic writer, and he's writing a lot of women characters, and he does a really good job. Is like I think, I mean, I say this, I'm a man, but I think that the way he speaks, he writes these women is like really really smart. So I was kind of hesitant about Tom King. I think Tom King is fantastic. That's the thing. I'm not one of the people that think Tom King is like divulsive. I think most of the stuff that I've read from Tom King has been really phenomenal. So I was actually really looking forward to seeing what he would do for Wonder Woman. And I tell you, he hasn't really disappointed. I know we were talking before about there being a book that is really, really like really word heavy. It's like, we're talking about Amazing Spider-Man. It's like very, very word heavy. I think that Wonder Woman is very like dialogue word heavy at points, but in a more of a prestige kind of way, more of a way in which 1980s comic books were like old school what's my boy's name that did Swamp Thing? Damn it.
Alan Moore.
Alan Moore. Thank you. Alan Moore. It's like more like that kind of move. It's like that kind of groove. It's like a lot of words. It's like plot driven. It's like very, very like dialogue heavy. But all of the dialogue really leads to how the plot unfolds. And the art is so beautiful that it takes you away from you being like, all right, crap, like there's no more action in this. So, it like, for instance, you said you read the first issue first. There's a lot. I read issues
1 and 2. Yeah.
2. Okay. There's a lot that happens in it, but there's not really much action in it. But when you get to issue 2, that's when you see a lot of action, and it really was a great payoff. I think that's kind of been the pacing. Is like one issue will be like dialogue heavy. The next issue is just like action based, like they're running through stuff happens, and then it kind of slows down again and kind of gets you ready for the next arc, and then it's action based. Like there's like, for instance, like the first issue, you finding out what happens with Wonder Woman, in which like you find out that the Amazons end up getting exiled on some like ice shit, like how like ice, like as if they're immigrants, like trespassing on American soil because something actually happens. I'm not going to spoil it. Something happens, so it's all that is plot heavy, is plot driven. You find out that there's like a ancient old patriarchal organization that's kind of running things from behind the scenes that are kind of making things hard on Wonder Woman and the Amazons. So establishing all of that is very word heavy. You find out that her daughter is around. So for some reason, her daughter shows up in it. There's another truth lasso. All these different elements that they're building they're doing more world building. But by the second issue, things kind of pick up. Like there's a lot of stuff that happens, and I tell you, I think one of the best aspects of it is the art, because like Sanfri's art is like, I think it's Daniel Sanfri, I think is doing the art right now. But
yep,
his art, Sam Sampier, yeah, his art is just absolutely astounding. It's like some of that art that you look at, and it's like it's almost like it's delicious to look at, if that makes sense. It's like you look at it and you're like, I don't want to stop looking at this. It's so freaking beautiful. It's sort of like that art that makes you feel like you're watching like a really, really sharp and well directed animated movie. It's just so beautiful. It's like there's scenes in it, like there's decisions that they make when it comes to just the directing. There's like a part, I remember there's issue 2, Wonder Woman is like in the elevator. She takes her tiara off and like throws the tiara. And when the tiara, it kind of like this, when it comes to the directing of that scene, they decide to go where the tiara is. So they'll cut to where the tiara is, and they'll cut back to her in the elevator. And it's not even just showing her face. It kind of shows other parts of her body. It shows like maybe her boots. It'll show her dress. It'll show like her hair. They do little tiny things. So it has this like cinematic appeal. Just the art direction alone has a cinematic appeal. And that's the whole kind of speed of the whole story. The whole book has that kind of cinematic appeal. It's like, oh, yeah, let's see bits and pieces of like how things work, and it turns into a splash page. It's like really, really well paced, but it can be dialogue heavy. But I think it's one of the best pound for pound books out right now, especially in regards to trying to recontextualize and reestablish what Wonder Woman could look like in today's time. Like if we were to tell a story about if she was planted in today's America, what would that look like for her? And I think that they're doing a really good job with that. I mean, I think that some of it's on the nose. You know, like there's like the character that's the part of the sovereignty.
Oh,
I think the sovereign dude, the leader of the sovereign nation, the patriarchy. He's kind of on the nose. He's kind of like a Ming the Merciless kind of old school villain that's like sitting behind the scenes, like Dr. Claw, like in the shadows, like petting the cat, kind of get down. But it
mm-hmm.
works. It works. It works in the way in which he kind of works in a symbolistic way about like what patriarchy looks like in America today. And I think it's a magnificent book. I know I've kind of talked my head off to kind of get around to how to explain what I think about the book, but I think it's
No, I
just a
mean,
really
I
magnificent
appreciate
book.
your enthusiasm about it. Like, I definitely, that's what this is all about. I want to hear what books people are enjoying, what books people are loving. I have to be honest and say the first two issues I did not really like. Like,
I hear that. Okay,
honestly,
all right.
like,
I hear that. What did you
and
dislike about it?
I will say, like, right away, my biggest frustration with the first issue was just that I felt like Wonder Woman was a cameo. Like she's not doing the narration. She didn't get a
Yeah.
lot to say. She shows up in it towards the end, and I'm just like, um, I'm wondering, does Tom King even want to write Wonder Woman? Like he seems to want to write the
Oh,
Sovereign. He wants to seem to write Sarge Steel. He seems to want to write
yeah.
what's his name? What's his name? The guy
Who's
she
that?
usually loves, the
Who's
blonde
Steve
guy,
Trevor?
Steve
Steve
Trevor.
Trevor?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
like and like I get that, these characters might make it for an interesting story. Maybe he is trying to like make a huge
Interesting.
distinction between patriarchy and the Amazon. Uh, I mean, maybe he's going somewhere with it, and I'll try to like put my biases aside, and because like obviously, if you're enjoying this book, if people are enjoying this book, maybe I'm missing something, but I just for me, I want to see Wonder Woman. I want to see her thoughts, her perspective on things. I want her to be centered in her own book. I want
I'll tell
because
you
I'm
this. I'll tell you that as the story goes on, she does make more of an appearance, and it does kind of get centered onto her a lot more. Especially the most recent issue I read, I was very
good.
surprised. It does, but I would argue. I think that first and foremost, I think your points are extremely valid about you saying like, all right, why is this being told from this perspective, and it's not her book. She's kind of being featured in it. But I think that that's by design. I think that's also a responsible choice by King, because I think King went into this knowing that he's a man writing a story through a man's lens, about a woman, and he may make some mistakes. So I think that like him deciding to take the route of talking about the men involved in her environment and involved in her story and how in what ways that they are trying to get at her and how like she's this legendary mythic figure that they just can't seem to grasp. I think that that in itself kind of speaks a lot about the male gaze and how men tend to look at women. And
But
I
that's
think
my
that him
problem because
using
like I
that
just
as
feel
a
like
device was smart. Yeah.
I'm just kind of tired of that because like when you look at
Mhm.
Wonder Woman's history, most of it has been written from the male gaze. Like you like all most of her writers have been men. Like she's had a number of women writers and artists contribute to her history, and they did some great work. But primarily DC has given the book to men, or even William Moulton Marsters. Like he created Wonder Woman, so with the input from his wives. I think he had multiple
Yeah.
wives.
Two. Yeah.
Um,
Two wives. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, so like it's just like a whole it's interesting history when you look at it because Wonder Woman is considered like, part of feminist history. So it's like is it through the lens of men, or is it like or is it or does it really speak to women? I mean, like you said, your wife loves Wonder Woman. I think there are a lot of
Right.
women who love Wonder Woman as well. So it's like I just kind of want to see that more reflected in the comic books. Like I remember like Renee Day Liz. I think that Renee Day Liz is a woman, but that creator is kind of like kind of shy. I think so. I don't know too much about
Hmm.
them, but they did
Hmm.
a whole great like Legend of Wonder Woman series that I really loved. And
Hmm.
like for me, I'm more drawn to like the fantastic, like the more fantasy elements of Wonder Woman.
Gotcha.
Like and so like for this story to be more like a political action thriller. I mean, there's a place for that. There's an appeal to that, but it's just like I don't know if that's what I necessarily want in a Wonder Woman book.
I
Like
hear
I feel
that.
like we've had a lot of that already, like with the whole rivalry with Maxwell Lord and all that. Like I mean, it can be interesting. It's just like um I kind of like the more magical, mythical gods and stuff,
Mhm.
and maybe he'll get
I hear
into
that.
that more.
Right.
And maybe I just need to give
Mhm.
it some time. I don't know. We'll see where that
Yeah.
goes.
I hear that. I just think that with the state of the America right now, when it comes to like Roe v. Wade being like
Mm.
gone, I think that we're in a state in which Wonder Woman needs to be recentered that way. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
Tom King is recentering her in a political way because right now that's where we're at. I mean, like you got a sycophant trying to run for president again. You got these. I mean, also you got a war criminal trying to run for reelection. All of that
Mm-hmm.
affects the way in which women see themselves in society. And Wonder Woman has always has reflected that for the last 80 years. So I think that her being in a space to like kind of tell that story and tell a political action thriller, I personally think is like really powerful and important. But I understand what your point of view. I think you perhaps maybe if you would be interested, maybe you could check out Wonder Woman Historia. Have you heard of Wonder Woman Historia
I've heard
by
great things.
chance?
I haven't gotten a chance to read it yet, but I've heard
Okay.
nothing but positive things about it.
Yeah,
But what I
I
did
have it.
read
I never read it
recently,
though.
but what I did read was Nubia,
Yeah.
which is by Stephanie
Yeah, by
Williams.
Stephanie
Uh,
Williams, right.
yeah, like this
That's the
is
big homie right
something,
there. I love her. She's great, man.
right? Like that was interesting to see.
Mhm.
A black woman writer break into comics, into the big two with a black character who's been overlooked for decades. Like Nubia
Right,
had been in probably like one or two comics prior to her getting
right.
the book. So it's like I felt like that was something that was pretty revolutionary, and like I was
Agreed.
intrigued to see where it went, but I feel like they didn't quite commit to it because it was like I was really having a hard time trying to follow what books was Nubia even in because like
Right,
okay,
right.
so they're
Same
like,
for
oh wait,
me.
she's appearing in Justice League. Wait, no, she's appearing
Yeah.
in what, like Amazon Attack or whatever.
She
Like, I don't know,
she appeared in Yara Flores stories for a bit. It was like a lot of
mm,
different things that she
and
was
then there
all
was the
over the
trial
place.
of the Amazons going on at that
Right.
time. So there was a lot happening, but I kind of fell off of it. But like I ultimately that was something that excited me recently. And Nubia did appear,
Mhm.
I think, in issue 2 of this book.
She did,
Um,
yeah, she did, right. And I mean, like, because
so
I mean, she's important. Like, they're trying to showcase her more, and I think that's really, really, really good. I mean, but I do think that when it comes to like the state of like what they're telling with Wonder Woman, I think that it's important. Well, I'll tell you this, man. I know that you said that you weren't really too crazy about like the position around like them being a political action thriller, but there are a lot of things that does happen as the story goes on. I think issue 3 or 4 it was the action set piece in that which is breakneck. I was
mhm.
like I was just astounded. I actually got to go back and read it because it was one of those things that it kind of felt like a story. It kind of felt like a action movie. Everything that happened in it, it was just like so grandiose and big, and there's so many things were happening at once, and it kind of like made up for all the plot that you had to kind of get wade through to get to it. It was just so damn good. So I do encourage you to keep reading. I think that you may enjoy it
Yeah,
as you keep going, but I do
yeah.
hear
I'm gonna
your point
try
of
to
view
keep
about it.
reading. I'm gonna
Hmm.
try to keep reading. Like I know Daniel Sampier from. I remember he did the Dark Crisis that came out a year or two ago,
Oh, he did Dark
and
Crisis. Okay,
mhm. And like
right,
I
all right.
I do think he's a really good artist, although I do
Hmm.
think his art has a certain like stoicism about it, where it's like all the figures
Oh, interesting.
are very like strong and
Yes,
like
strong
solid,
and
and
yeah,
and
that's an
that's
interesting point. Hmm.
and that's not a bad thing per se. It's just like they don't necessarily have like the fluidness or like the curve curvature of line that other artists might bring. Um,
Right.
but like, this is not like a mark against him because like his art is good. His art's great even. So like I'm not like it's
Hmm.
beautiful. So I really can't like critique it. I'm just saying stylistically,
Hmm.
um, it's just a little I don't want to say blocky, but like it's just solid. Everybody looks
I
solid.
understand that. No, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, like, but like, I mean, I think it's actually right. I think it's like really astounding. I was floored by it. I see your point of view. I think he might have did Heroes for Hire too. I want to say he did Heroes for Hire. His art
Really?
was in Heroes for Hire. I want to say it was. I
Like,
don't
do you recall
remember.
like which era maybe? Because I don't recall that.
Not Heroes Fire. My bad. Not Heroes Fire. I'm so sorry. Heroes in Crisis. That's what I meant to say. Heroes in Crisis. I'm
No,
pretty sure
that
he did
was
Heroes in Crisis.
Clayman, I think. I think
Oh, it's
Clayman. They have a
Clayman.
similar.
Okay. They have a
They have
similar
a
style.
similar
I'm sorry. That
style.
was Clayman. You're right. Clayman did that, and he did the Batman run for a while too. That Clayman's Batman
Hmm.
run was like incredible. Like it was Tom King. Yeah, it was him and
Yeah,
Tom
Tom
King.
King, Bat and Cat,
Yeah,
or something like that.
yeah. That
Yeah,
was dope. That was dope. Actually, I didn't
I
expect to
I
like
do
that so
think
much.
I do think I like Clayman a little bit more than Daniel St. Pierre. I mean,
Hmm.
I do think Daniel St. Pierre is great. I'm not trying to knock on him. I'm just saying
Hmm.
I do prefer Clayman a bit more, and like just
Yeah, I hear that.
I have other preferences, but um I'm definitely gonna give this book a chance and see where it goes because like this is the big Wonder Woman book out right now. I gotta see what's happening because I gotta support my girl. Um,
Yeah, man, it's dope. I think, like I said, I think it's a really important book to have right now, and I think it will stand the test of time. I think it's like, as I said before, I think that it's quite. I know you said that you're tired of seeing men's perspectives on Wonder Woman, but I think that Tom King is using that as a device, and he's using that as a way in which to sort of hold up the legacy of Wonder Woman and explain how important she is, because
yeah,
especially because the character itself was made in a patriarchy, made by a man. So how in what ways can men look at this from a perspective in which they can learn from this female character? Like, what was the point of this female character? In what ways, and I think that one of the best things about that is for like men to actually well, I guess in Tom King's sense, to actually use that as a device, using like, all right, the male perspective as a device. And I think that's what he's doing in the story. Most of it is told from a male's perspective about how amazing they find this Wonder Woman to be. And I think that that's a powerful thing. But that's me though. I mean, like I understand what you're saying, but I think that I think personally, I think there are better women writers that are suited to tell a Wonder Woman story from her perspective only. Like I think Gail Simone has done it and done a magnificent job. And I hear Wonder Woman Historia that tells a story of all the Amazons and and how they could get connected to the mythical gods before Wonder Woman is even born. That's like tells the Themyscira story. It tells her mom's story. It tells descendants of the Amazons. It tells all of this. It tells all of that, and that's through a woman's perspective. That's Kelly Sue DeConnick. So there are women that do it better. But I do think that if you're going to take a Wonder Woman story, I think that Tom King did it in a very smart and I think responsible way. That's just my final thoughts on it. I just wanted to say
well,
that.
if you would consider this, I want you to,
Mm-hmm.
if you have the opportunity, please read this book, Legend of Wonder Woman. If you can find it, like you
I've
read
seen
that,
it.
and I'll
Hmm.
read Tom King's Wonder Woman, and we'll trade notes.
Cool. I'll do that. I'm with that. Yeah. Oh, sweet. Actually, I think I might have read this but it's been a while since I read it. I think I might have read it because I see that Etta Candy's black. I remember that being a great change for me.
No,
That
this
Etta
isn't
Candy
that
being
one.
black. Oh, okay.
I do like that change, but that was Greg Rucka's Wonder Woman,
Oh,
and I
right. That
like
was
that
Greg
one as
Rucka's
well.
Wonder Woman. Right.
Like I'm here for that, but like but this version of Candy is white, but she is modernized. It's very much drawn from the original like old William Moulton Marsters comics, but it's like just updated. Um,
Huh.
and it has elements of like the George Perez run, I think, but like
Ooh.
I think it's worth looking into. It has more of the fantasy
Ooh.
feel. Like it tells her origin in a new way. It's a little
Ooh.
similar to the movie in a few ways. Um, so like I don't know. I think it's worth checking out for people who haven't read it yet.
Tight. Yeah, man.
It's
I'm
kind
gonna
of like
check
an
it.
alternate universe, so it's not set in main continuity, but it's kind of better for that.
Wow.
I think.
Yeah, I agree with that actually. I think that the ultimate storyline in Marvel right now is kind of showing that. That is a good idea to kind of break away from all of that legacy and all of those like ties to like continuity and just tell a fresher story. Because people know
Hmm.
the majority of people know, like the essence of these character stories. And if you could just refashion that for a newer audience or a modernized way, it can go miles. That could be huge for a lot of people. So I hear you.
Yes. All
Hmm.
right. Well, we've got one more book that we got to
Yeah, one
talk
more
about
book.
here.
Yeah.
World's Finest by Mark Wade and
Yes.
Dan Mora. Okay, this is the Elementary storyline featuring Metamorpho and cameos by tons of other heroes. Because this is World's Finest. Everybody's got to pop in there.
Yeah, everyone's got to pop up. Yeah.
So we got Batman, we got Robin, but we also got I'm gonna say Batman and Superman, but we also got Robin. Um, we got Metamorpho, we got Supergirl, we got Amazo, we got all these different characters.
Yeah.
Mark
I
Waid to me is
actually
just one of my favorite writers, honestly. Like
word, right? I love
he's
him.
done so much. Yeah.
Right.
So it's just a good time. Like it's not particularly deep as a story, but
No,
it doesn't have to be. Like it's kind of like
no.
I mean, it has moments where they do show like we can. There are moments where Mark Waid lets you know that you know he's not just like some new kid off the block. Like
Right, right. No,
like
it's true. It's
like
true. You're right about
like
that. Well put.
like he will put some depth into there, or put a little reference in there that like it's kind of like just remarkable in its understatedness because like what he's doing also a storyline that's set in its own continuity, sort of like I don't
Right.
know if this relates to continuity or not. Like I it's been like 20 issues and I'm just like I don't know if this
Yeah.
is continuity, but I don't really care because
Right.
it's that good.
Me neither. Right, right. It's so much fun. It's like the way I mean the way I've been looking at it is like very swashbuckly. It's just like it's very like brave and bold. Like oh, like let's pop in and do bombastic things and all these crazy weird like comic booky silly things happen. It's like science fiction, high science fiction. It's a lot of that, but it's like grounded by like these characters like the heroes. Like we know the heroes, so it's like their relationship is kind of the Batman and Superman's relationship kind of is the magnetism that holds the whole story together. But everything else around him is
Yeah,
so superfluous and bombastic, and it's like super swashbuckly. That's how I look at it. It's like a lot of fun.
yeah,
Like, oh, who,
yeah. It's
them
like
doing
the
stuff together.
it's the fun of the Silver Age, but with the
Right.
narrative qualities of the modern age. So it's
Agreed.
like
Yeah.
so he just balances those sensibilities really well with especially with Dan Moore's
Indeed.
art and like
Yeah.
and he does things that on the surface seem obvious or even stupid or like toyetic like right here you've got Ultra Metamorpho or whatever his name is,
Right.
Ultra Morpho. Like it just sounds
Yeah.
stupid but it looks cool and it makes
Cool.
sense in the
Right.
story. So
Right. Exactly, because the story still makes sense. It's not like you're reading it and you're like, "What is this? What is happening with this? This is silly. This doesn't even make sense." But Mark Waid is so well fashioned with these characters that he could like tie an old continuity or tie in continuity that was like with threads that were left undone and actually kind of
mhm,
retie it and make it make sense for the story. And
yeah.
I gotta say, like it's a lot of fun to read these. I'm a couple of issues behind on this too, but I've read the bulk of like the story so far. I know you said that there's like 20 issues. Out of the 20, I probably read about maybe about like 15, 16 of them. I may be behind like 4 or 5 issues or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But I like love
Yeah,
it, man.
yeah, this storyline ended at issue 17, and like that's where I'm at. And apparently, I think there's like 30 something
Mm.
issues out right now, so I'm
Yeah,
still
yeah,
quite
it's a
behind.
lot.
But I'm
Mm.
gonna catch up one day because like it's been an enjoyable
Yeah.
ride since the first issue,
Mm.
and
Right.
you know, I think my only critique, if again, it's gonna go back to the issue of gender equality. I mean, like, uh, I mean, okay, as a queer male, I kind of love seeing Batman, Superman, and a title together with all the broy vibes of it. But to that point though, Wonder Woman is very excluded. Like she's on this cover here in the background, and she does like
Is
have a
she?
cameo. Yeah, that's Wonder
Oh,
Woman
that is
right
her.
there.
Holy Moses.
But like as part of the Trinity, this is not about the Trinity. This is about Batman and Superman. Unfortunately, that's
Right.
what it is. And also Robin. Like Robin, this harkens back to the original World's Finest title where it was about those
Yep.
three, and they were basically
Hmm.
like two queer dads raising their son. Like
Precisely. That's really what it was. It really what it
But
was.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, like that's what
Yeah.
it is. And Mark Wade,
Mm.
I think he's aware of this, but I also don't think
Mm.
he's like, I don't think he's leaning. I don't know if he's
No, he
leaning
doesn't
into
lean
it or
into
away
it.
from it. He's just
Nah.
kind of like right on the fence
Mhm.
with it. He's like,
Right on the
okay,
cusp.
if
Yeah.
if
You
you
can
want
pick
to
it up if
see
you
it,
want
it's
to.
there. If
Yeah.
you don't
It's
want to see
there.
it, it's
Right.
then fine.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
there is a queer subtext to it, and
Hmm.
so
Indeed.
I mean,
Right.
it's kind of interesting from that point of view. You've got uh I mean, you do have Supergirl, who's been in and out the storyline, having some
Yeah.
interesting moments. A little relationship with Robin, but look at this! Look at this cover, though.
Yeah,
By
man. Oh
Bab
wow. Look at
Star.
that cover. But Babstar does that, bro. My wife actually is a subscriber to Babstar's her art because her Patreon actually,
Listen, I
and
love it. I'm not knocking it.
she always does this kind of stuff. She always like does a lot of queer baiting stuff. She does a lot of stuff
Yeah,
that's like super duper like, oh, let me like make these men like she did a couple of just like her most recent series of books of a stick because she sends out her art in stickers. So she'll
yeah.
do a bunch of stickers that like look like this. It's so
I am
cool. Like
not
she just does
mad
a
at it.
couple.
Like I
Yeah,
love
it's
it. Like
great.
look
It's
at this.
great.
Batman's chest hair is in the shape of a bat.
Oh snap! I didn't even peep that. That's great. That's great. I didn't even
That is
peep that. That's really
hilarious.
funny. That's really
Oh my
really funny,
god.
man. Wow,
Oh
that's
my
great.
god.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, like this is like the type of series you could do that with, though. That you could have
Yeah,
that
and
type of
so
fun that you could
so
like
you
kind of
go from
expand
like
on those things.
so you go from like a more like queer aesthetic to more like to more like
Hmm.
manly aesthetic with like this one's
Yeah, right,
Libermejo.
right.
His art tends to be very like I don't know how to describe this. Gritty,
Steely. I say steely and
steely,
gritty. Yeah. Hmm.
um like everyone is fully clothed. But
Right. It's like yes, yeah,
but yeah,
man.
it's
But
just
I think it's great,
it's
man.
still beautiful. It's
I
still
love that
beautiful in
book.
its own way.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so there's lots of cool covers, lots of cool stories.
Yeah, yeah.
I
How do you feel
I
about
think that's it.
since with yeah? Go ahead.
Go
Sorry.
ahead.
Oh, I
I
was
was
just
just gonna
simply
wrap
going to
it
ask
up.
you about the book. Oh, you want to wrap it up? Okay, I was going to ask you before we wrap it up. I wanted to ask you about Metamorpho because we were talking about the Elemental series, like what's going on with that storyline right
Yeah.
now. And I was just curious about like, what do you think about like the character of Metamorpho and Simon Stagg? I personally have always truly loved Metamorpho. I like
Okay.
love Metamorpho, and I think he's like a really underused character. And I think
Hmm.
he to me is in the same vein of a character that like the thing, like Ben Grimm, the thing, like this really
Okay.
charming sort of old school character that kind of is like really dopey in a lot of ways, but really is like simple minded enough to have a really big and generous heart. And I think that he's like that character that represents that in DC. And I think that not to mention, I think his power set is really dope, and I think his relationship with his self image is like really compelling. So I was
That's
curious, like, what do you
yeah.
think about him? Mm-hmm.
You made some good points. I mean, I will say the truth for me, I don't care about Metamorpho. Like I don't really have any
Oh,
interest in him at all. But then that's why I was
wow.
so late to reading this book. But then when I finally read it, I'm like, you know what?
Oh,
They're actually making Metamorpho interesting. Like I actually
yeah,
liked it.
Metamorpho's the dude, man. I love
I was
Metamorpho,
like,
bro. Metamorpho's
okay,
so dope.
Metamorpho, I
Yeah,
see you. Like they put some shine
yeah.
on Metamorpho, and I'm here
Yeah,
for
man.
it. Like that's the thing about Mark Waid. Like he has such love for like all of DC
Right,
and Marvel, and he will
right.
bring the characters who are like less popular and bring them to the forefront and tell an interesting story with them, and that's why I love it. Like so this book did bring me around on Metamorpho. I'm like, okay,
Tight,
I see the hype. I see why we're here
tight.
right now. So
Yeah, man. He's
um
dope, bro. I mean, I think he's a great character.
and
Hmm.
I also want to add to that and just say you know, another thing about this book that I found interesting was even though it has this kind of timeless quality to it where I don't even
Hmm.
know if it's set in the modern day or the past.
Yeah, the past, right.
It's kind of set in the past because they do kind of reference like it is kind of in continuity because they have this whole tie-in to Batman and Robin and the Devil Neza and all that stuff. But the
Mm.
point is that I lost my point, but I think I was trying to say that Mark Waid. Okay, so he did this element of the story is like we come to find that AI is the villain. Okay, like they have this like next
Right,
level version of Amazo,
right.
and it's really a threat to all of mankind and Earth. Like it really escalates very quickly. and I
Yes, indeed.
and we and we're seeing this as a recurring theme in a lot of superhero stuff these days, from X-Men to DC and like this. It's I mean it's always been a threat, but I feel like
Hmm.
now in every book it's like AI is the threat, and in the real world like
Mm.
AI is a threat, and it's like
Right.
um and I don't know how much more we're gonna have to hammer home that point before people start getting it in their brains. But
I think we're going to hammer it a lot, man. I think that the arc of change is much faster now. I think that when you have like a book that deals with AI and the changing of technology in like maybe the 1970s, 1980s, when you tell those stories, it's you get like every now and again you'll get a story about AI or like a totalitarian government that actually utilizes technology to oppress people and all. But nowadays, it's happening faster. AI is changing. We just got like AI, like we got ChatGPT in 2021 or something like that. Like really was disclosed to the world, and then like took over. And now we got Apple Intelligence is coming out and new iPhones, and that's all connected to ChatGPT, and everything's happening much faster. And that just happened this year, and that was 3 years ago that ChatGPT got disclosed, and that's why I think we're getting more of these stories that people are like, oh, let's write into like the effects of what AI is doing to people and the American populace. I think, I mean, you think about like you brought up the X-Men. The X-Men have been dealing with AI since Days of Future Past. That's like the 1980s
even
or
before
like that.
like I found this
Even
old
before that,
issue where they had a villain named Computo who you never hear about anymore. But like it's a good issue. And come to find out, that Cyclops once had a political podcast or a radio show back in the 60s. Like
that's sweet.
Read that issue because I was reading it and I was shocked and I was like, wow, like
that's dope. Wow,
yeah.
that's really, really dope. And I'm gonna go back and dovetail and go back into that because that wow.
Let me see
man.
if I can pull that up because it was interesting. But in any point, he's not even popping up here, but like but yeah, in this World's Finest issue though, like the AI becomes a threat and you get all the classic robotic characters and all the scientists from the past. And it just kind of
like
it's interesting.
Yeah, it's great. I think I think Magnus shows up, Professor Ivo shows up, Red Tornado shows up. All these but it's easy to reclassify them in today's time because like again, it's about like this is all science fiction stories. So when you have science fiction, you could just kind of refashion it into the modernized times because you were basically telling the same stories about technology and like where it was going and like science. And that's what science is now. We're deeply entrenched into like, machine learning, technology, quantum computing, all of this shit. Like it's entrenched into all of that. So you could easily tell these stories quick, I think. I think it's really, really fruitful because it's important stuff now.
Yeah, this was the issue, X-Men 48 in 1968. And it had like what waits within the hive, like the hive mind of AI. Like it was crazy when I read this from like a modern perspective. I'm like, wow.
That's dope. Wow, I gotta definitely check that, man.
Beware Computo, commander of the robot hive. So this was actually an Arnold Drake story, but like it's definitely one of the lesser known X-Men stories because this is before Claremont, before
before Claremont. Wow, yeah.
Like before Nimrod and Sentinels. But look at the Sentinels going back to the first couple X-Men comic books. Like they were fighting Sentinels in their day-to-day life
back then. So right. So I mean, it's like there's always, and I get that's AI. It's the Sentinels AI.
Like, can you imagine if the government? Like, I do not need the government to weaponize robots to come kill me. Like, we already got police brutality.
Exactly. Precisely. Exactly.
Like, we don't need AI killing us too.
Too real. Too based. Too real. Yeah, man.
All right. But I think this is a good place to kind of stop our chat today. Like, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Man, thank you for having me.
Always good talking comics with you. Thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you for everyone who's made it this far. You guys are amazing. Thank you to everyone who has liked and subscribed on our YouTube because we are a growing channel. We hit over 20 subscribers recently, so thanks to each and every one of you.
Tight.
Upward and onward, right? We'll see where this goes.
Exactly.
So, anything else you'd like to share before we go?
Just look me up on Threads, man. I'm Big Boy Nerd on Threads. That's where I'm most active. And you can find on Threads, you can get a link to my actual newsletter in which I write about comic books, music, and mental health. And and just like, so if you ever want to follow and just get a little glimpse around like what I'm into these days, that'd be great. And that's like one of the main places that you can find me is on Threads, and follow my newsletter. And I should be unraveling my podcast. I'm hoping in the next few weeks. It's been a lot more work than I expected. So hopefully in the next few weeks, I'll be able to do that.
No, that's all right. Like, I can tell you from my own experience, it can be a tricky onboarding ramp to figure out
Yes, indeed.
podcasting. But we're
indeed.
excited for it. So everyone go
Thank
check
you.
out Travell on Threads and his Substack and his writings and everything. So also you can find me at DMVCBN, also on Threads, primarily, but maybe occasionally on Twitter.
Sorry,
Instagram.
I gotta run to something real quick.
All right.
Sorry about that. Yeah, but
thanks, Travell.
I'll check
See
you
ya.
out soon.
All right,
Later.
Excelsior.
Yeah,
Bye.
sorry. Excelsior.